Okay, now? All right. Okay, call the meeting to order at 1:02. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll call the roll.
Director Cicada?
I'm here.
Director Davidson?
Here.
Director Radaman?
Here.
President Underhill?
Here.
And Director Thomas is on his way.
Okay. At this time, I'm opening it up for public comment, but we have no public unless our employees want to act as public.
Is there anybody online?
Jesse and Matt, so.
Jesse and Matt,
No public.
but no public. Okay. All right, if we will go to item number 3, the consent agenda. 3A, approval of minutes. 3B, director's timesheets. 3C, purchase of 550 kilowatt standby generator. And 3D, approval of declaration of surplus equipment.
Move for acceptance?
I want to pull a couple items.
I wanted to pull a couple of items.
I wanted to pull 3C and 3D.
Oh, those are the two that I wanted. Okay,
Yay.
good.
Which ones are you pulling?
3C and 3D,
I'll move for acceptance of 3A, 3B.
Second.
okay? Cindy?
Yes, ma'am. My go?
Hold on, we have to vote on the first item.
Oh, okay, sorry. I want this over fast.
I like yours.
Director Cicada?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Radaman?
Yes.
President Underhill?
Yes. Okay, now?
Okay. So regarding the generator purchase budget, well, it looks like we budgeted 180,000. How many generators were you anticipating to purchase with that 180?
One.
One, it was always
Yeah.
just one? Okay.
So with that budget allocation, it was gonna be a piece of equipment and a generator. And so we had ranked the top 5 worst generators, if you will, and this will replace the number 1.
Okay, so do you anticipate we're doing this every year now at $130,000?
Yeah, I anticipate doing it every year. The dollar amount is gonna vary depending on the need, but I can tell you that the next 4 that our staff ID'd as the kind of the worst generators are comparably priced.
And the one that you're replacing, will it be on standby as a backup at some point? Because it still works, it's just old and needs maintenance, right?
Great point, yeah, so with the one that we're replacing, there are others that are like it in the system, so we should be able to use parts, or we could potentially look at staging it somewhere else. However, if it's gonna sit offline for some time, I imagine we're gonna have quite a bit of rehab to do, so it'll probably be best served as a spare parts generator for the others that are similar to it.
Okay. So like with our capital improvement plans, we do those 10-year CIPs. Should we, or do you already have a CIP for equipment? Because these are such large dollar amounts. I'm a little concerned, hi Russ, with, it's something we have to do, and I get that. And I see that there were some less expensive ones. This seemed like the better value for the dollar, so I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering with, FERC licensing coming up and other things, should we be doing a 10-year or 15-year, whenever that FERC license, and start setting some goals as to where we would say, okay, we need to have this much of funds set aside. And at some point, we have to make that a priority. And if it's not broken yet, okay, so now we have an emergency fund over here, but try and, use these the best we can instead of continuing to spend, $100,000 each year, sometimes more than that. I mean, we need the upgraded equipment, and I get that, but at some point, we may not have enough money for everything. So how do we plan better to spread it out and make sure we're not, forgetting about that FERC license, which I think that's one of the biggest things right now. And of course, we always have, you know, other things, but,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, those were my questions. I just
And
wondered
great
how
points.
many you were asking.
Yeah, and great points that you have made, and we have developed basically a look ahead, for lack of a better term, for equipment replacement, and it's usually, the push is usually regulatory compliance for, you know, the backhoe
Oh, yeah.
replacement, large on-highway vehicles like the back-ons, and then the generators are, a lot of the regulatory there is air emissions, but at the same time, it's really age. And so we don't have a concrete, hey, every 5 years, we're gonna review generators that are X age and replace them. We don't have a concrete policy, but we are working to develop a better way to assess generators in general, you know, for replacement.
And then, I just thought of another one. Have we utilized and researched any grants to purchase these generators? I think we got some before, right? Didn't we get a grant before on one of them, or, no, that's the water tanks, I think.
So there's been a couple avenues this past year that we have pursued. One is through FEMA, through their hazard mitigation grant program. We applied for replacement of 11 generators, and unfortunately, they didn't pick that project. It didn't rise to the top of their priority list. And we also looked into a program called the Carl Moyer Equipment Program. The Carl Moyer program is pushed by the California Air Resources Board, and the struggle with that program is that it requires a lot of hours of operation to kind of rise to the top of the list. And our equipment just doesn't operate enough to be considered prime candidate for grant funding. Yeah, but I mean, I'm always all ears for grant opportunities. For
I think
equipment
maybe in our finance meeting, we might want to talk about a 10-year give or take plan for some
So-
point coming up soon, maybe.
Damon just done a great job responding to all of that. I just add, he done a great job in making sure we have a very detailed inventory of all of our generators, their age, their status, and as he said, prioritized the order in which we're going to need to gradually replace them over time, or identify, we do have some facilities that don't have backup generation where we've identified that as a need. We haven't put them on a schedule necessarily yet. We're evaluating it every year based on the budget status for that year, which is what happened this year. So I think we're kind of maintaining that flexibility right now. But you're absolutely right. We need to be making sure we're planning for that in advance, so we don't come into a situation where all of a sudden we have to replace, 8 of them in a given year, considering how expensive they
Be
are.
a little bit more proactive on it instead of responding and, yeah, they broke now, but at least if you know, okay, we have that one earmarked for 2 more years and know you got to limp it through
Yeah.
or something.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're trying to do with replacing, identifying the highest priority ones and replacing them gradually over time, rather than having to, getting into a bind where we have to replace a bunch of them.
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Director Radaman?
Yeah, I have some questions on this, and it's more about maybe questions, maybe a complaint of how this is presented. This is the thickest packet item in the agenda, and I'm just trying to put all the stuff that's in the packet together with the recommendations and what's here. And it seems like what we have is we're going to be buying a generator, got 3 bids from 3 different companies, but all the information from those 3 bids doesn't seem to be in here. This Holt, there's a bid from Holt for 111, and I don't know what the other 2, the 66 and the 70, because there's no
Yeah.
mention of them. And then there's 2 other bids that are supposed to be in here, and there's all this Kohler stuff that I think is from but there's no dollar amounts associated with any of it. There's just a lot of specs and information, and then some things are highlighted. So just a little bit confused with if all I did was read the first 2 pages of your letter to Michael, and then the recommendation for purchase, if that's all I was reading, I think that makes sense, but the rest of the packet doesn't go with this item. And so I don't know, I just spent some time going through this stuff. And the one thing that Michael just mentioned is the inventory that we have of these. That would have been a good thing to throw in here and to show why there's these 5 that floated to the top that we're going to be looking at, and why this one is the most important. Anyway, that's all I
Yeah,
had.
yeah, understood. Normally, I would not include all the ancillary details associated with the bids, and actually, I think this one item is actually a load bank. So, yeah, understood, yep,
Oh, thanks.
duly noted.
Okay. And my question or comment was, do we have a master list of,
We do. yeah.
okay. And so our purchasing agent has access to whatever information, who we used before? Because the question was whether or not this company, if we had used them before.
So we use Central California Generator pretty routinely. Actually, we had a stator fail on our Lakemont generator last night, and Central Cal actually dropped off the replacement part today. So we have a very close relationship with them. We have the generator list in multiple formats. We have it in a spreadsheet that collects all the hours of operation for all of the generators, and we actually report that to the Air Resources Board annually. And then we also have it in our public safety power shutoff plan. And so that all of the generators, their locations, their GPS coordinates, their run hours at half load, and their phasing, the phases that they are able to operate under are all incorporated in that document, the spreadsheet, as well as an assessment that our mechanics have, which also looks at the ability to fuel the generators, the ease of access through the, I guess you could call it 2 seasons that we normally experience throughout the year.
Okay, that's fine. So if I might have a motion for approval of item 3C? Oh, Russ, did you have a question?
Yes.
Sorry,
First of all, let me apologize for being a few minutes late.
it was 3 minutes.
I was delayed by the train.
Oh, okay.
Is that the BART train you were trying to catch?
This says that this machine is gonna have a 3,000 gallon tank, and it's gonna have a 72 hour runtime. Is it actually gonna consume 44 gallons an hour of diesel?
It can at full load. It definitely can. Yes.
So how much does that come to each hour, dollar-wise?
Really though, so the approach here for that tank is that it'll be a regional store. Yeah, so that's really kind of one of the benefits of having such a large tank. We don't anticipate, I mean, knock on wood, we don't anticipate having to run the Hunter's Water Treatment Plant at full load
Oh, yeah.
under generator. I mean, if that's the case, then we have a massive water demand. We're running both high service pumps, the filters are operating, we're making a lot of water. That could happen at some point, and we will have a generator sized adequately to operate that way. Incidentally, the generator that we have at the site now will not. It can only run 1 high service pump under load. So this actually provides a little bit more of a supply reliability at the site, and it also allows us to fuel regionally off the tank.
This is only generally related to the subject here, but you perhaps heard that the Sierra Conservation facility there, the prison, they get their water out of Lake Tulloch. They put a standby generator in a chain link enclosure there, $150,000 generator that disappeared.
Yeah,
Oh, geez.
I heard about that.
Oh,
So take the wheels off of this one.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
oh,
understood.
Okay,
okay.
I have nothing further.
Move for acceptance?
Okay, I'll second. For 3C.
All those,
I want to talk about 3D as well.
call the roll?
Director Cicada?
Yes.
Director Thomas?
Yes?
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Retterman?
Yes.
President Underhill?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You should probably stay there.
Yeah.
I don't- Oh, yes. Yeah, your name is
Oh, yeah,
Damon.
gotcha.
Yeah. Approval of declaration of surplus equipment.
Let me start since I pulled
And
it.
Cindy?
So, a couple things. in the resolution, it says anything with the value of property exceeding 2,500, you have to bring it to us. So I would like to see what the value of all these items are, what you would estimate that to be, so we could say, okay, we could expect to get X amount of money. The other thing is, how do you determine that value? And who gets to buy that, or do you put it to a public auction, that type of thing? It goes to public auction first. And those are kind of my questions.
Yeah.
Who gets an opportunity to buy it, and who's putting the value on it? Do they get an opportunity to buy it?
All great questions. That's why, so a lot of this equipment is really aged, and it's really hard to put a value on it. A lot of it does not operate. So the best approach is to have the auction house put the value on it. I did do a little research though. A white M49 diesel forklift is going at the high for $1,000. The Coleman light trailer, ours doesn't even operate. I couldn't even find an estimation of value for that. For a Bobcat 825, ours is a 1981 vintage. We're looking at somewhere below $3,000 if it operates. Ours doesn't operate. So the backhoe is anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. That's probably the high dollar, air quotes, item for this surplus list. The pontoon boat trailer, not much information there. The Snowcat, there's an enthusiast group that I found online that would, if it was running, pay maybe close to $5,000. So it's really kind of the jury's out. Ours doesn't operate. The International, anywhere from $3,500 to $5,000 if it was running. So that's why I didn't really put in a cost estimate range, because you're right, for surplus material and equipment, it does go to the auction house and they handle that portion of it. So it's not like the district is going to make that call in terms of the value and then seek that specific dollar amount out.
So who's the auction house that we use? Do you do it like every year or every 2 years? You say, okay, we're ready to do this, and you have a compilation of this one and then maybe another one from previous years or anything?
Yeah, great question. So I wasn't here the last time there was an auction, but I understand it was Bar S, I believe it's called.
Bar None.
Bar None, which is a local auction house. And so that was gonna be our first approach, is to approach them again.
When you say local, you mean Sacramento.
Excuse me?
You mean Sacramento.
Yeah. The one that I understood we used before was from Modesto. So I know that this was the first, in recent terms anyway, the first go around with Bar None was the last auction that I believe Jesse handled the staff report for.
Okay.
No, and I agree with Cindy's questions that I think for Publix, this is something that I think stands out, that we're, getting equipment. A lot of people are interested in equipment. We can't just start giving it away. But what you just said, I would like to see, those things, your estimated value, and the top is 5 to 10, that would look good on this list as we're getting rid of stuff. And I think, and even what you said, what auction house how you get rid of it. Otherwise, staff probably gets calls on stuff like this, and this stuff appears on our agenda. People might even start calling and saying, "Hey, I need a backhoe. What are you getting rid of this for?"
Yeah.
Hey, while we're on the subject of salvage, what are we doing? I get calls all the time on those redwood tanks. And I've got another call. People are messaging me and texting.
It's the first thing people ask when they hear about that project.
Yeah. What are you doing with the redwood? So could we get? We're talking about salvage, and it's kind of on our not really on the agenda of redwood tanks, but as far as stuff that goes, what are we doing with that wood from those projects?
So that has to be accounted for. We can't donate it. We can't give it away. It's
Right.
market value. So if I believe, if
Part
I
of the
remember
demolition,
correctly,
isn't it?
the RFP included the contractor was going to be responsible for.
Yeah, I think last time we tore down just a 90,000 gallon tank, it had like $25,000 worth of redwood. So, and Calaveras Lumber, I think, purchased it
From the contractor,
from the contractor.
right.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure though
Okay.
that local.
So the contractor, whoever bids on the project to put one up and take it down, they do the taking down, they do the putting up, they do the plumbing, they do all that stuff, and then they get
And
rid of it.
selling.
And
And they get the material.
And it's a,
to do it.
and so it's a negative line item in the contract.
correct.
Okay.
We can,
Thank you.
yeah, last time we came to the conclusion that part of the demolition cost was offset by the value of the equipment.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
good.
Yeah, and FEMA's aware of that, and I know it's been discussed during the grant process also.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we'll make sure local, because I know that the Historical Society's expressed interest, and
Well,
local tradespeople have
Just
expressed
so you know,
interest.
what they want is a tank to build at the Red Barn.
To restore, right,
Yeah,
right.
to put back up. There's no way we're gonna take one of these big ones down and put it back up. But if
Right.
there's a small one that can be transported on a trailer and these can't, then that's what they're looking for.
Right.
And I think that Mr. Metzger's already hooked them up with someone else in the county that has a redwood tank that they're looking at now.
Yeah, but there's, like I said, everybody, that's the first question we get
Yeah.
from contractors and carpenters and anybody who has an interest in working with wood. It's really beautiful, phenomenal wood. So we'll make sure people locally are aware of it so they have an opportunity to access it.
Okay, and who it's going to or how they're getting rid of it is, I think, what they're interested in.
Right.
No, and on this one here, I think just let them know where it's going and how we're getting rid of it and that we're gonna get some money back for all this stuff.
Yep, understood.
Okay. And my question had to do with the status condition never installed. I mean, that is what really bothered me.
Yes.
Do our projects go so fast that here we have, $10,000 worth of stuff that can't be used.
Right.
That,
Yep, understood.
yes, Russ.
I have a question.
Oh,
Um,
well, he didn't answer me.
Well, I mean, I think the answer is, I think oftentimes, or not oftentimes, occasionally there's purchases that are made that aren't applicable for whatever it was they were purchased for. And there's really, I mean, these were purchased, I think 12, 13 years ago.
Oh,
And they've been sitting in a pump station for that amount of time. And actually, Mike Crank and I spent the last year trying to find an acceptable application for these flow meters and the pressures that they're designed to operate under. We just don't have in our distribution systems. We have higher pressures, we need higher pressure flow meters, and as a result, we can't use them. So the thought is we need to make room for other equipment in our pump station, and we need to get as much value out of these as we can by surplusing them. And the value 10, 12, 13 years ago may have been $10,000 a piece, but at this point in time, the technology associated with flow measurement has changed so much that the applicability is going to really be centered around people that might have these already in their systems, and they're looking for some sort of replacement module that these might have. And so the objective, I mean, bar none, ideally, it has clients that are within the municipal sector that would look for items such as this through an auction house.
so, well, my question again is, at the time, it seemed like an excellent purchase. And so now, looking at it, when we go out to purchase, we know we're going to be using it, or we have something in the future that will in fact use that, and we don't have to go this route.
You're absolutely right, and I think that's why the district brought on a purchasing agent, and I think that's why we
Yeah.
scrutinize purchases to the level that we do now. And we do it every single day, whether it's a $500 pump to a $5,000 pump. I mean, we're always talking about which is the best approach and the most cost-conscious approach.
What were the oak and glass doors for?
I believe they were for this building.
Oh.
They were for this building that never got used, so they've just been leaning against the wall in one place or another in the building for since this building was built.
All right. That's.
We have not been able to identify a use for them or any other agency that would make use of them, so.
Yes.
Move for acceptance.
Dan,
Wait a minute.
on the items like this, with the dollar volume, with greater, isn't there a procedure that they're supposed to kind of look for sister agencies or?
Yes.
And, you know, with a nod to Director Ratterman's comment, you know, for the future is, there is a procedure where all surplus items first are offered up to other public utilities, and then they go through the surplus path. Yes, that's correct.
Isn't that surplus property? Or is it surplus equipment?
This is
I don't
equipment,
know.
I'm talking
I
about.
don't remember us ever going through a surplus equipment procedure.
So I have done so at my former job, and it was, we had actually every year or every 2 years, we would surplus equipment, and the first effort right out of the gate is you reach out to the local public utilities and ask whether or not anybody's interested in X, Y, or Z.
But is that our policy? I believe our policy is about surplus property. I've never seen it used for equipment.
Yeah, our surplus policy, yeah, good point. It's pretty, it talks about anything over $2,500 must be auctioned essentially, or handled by a third party for sale, is really what it.
We've had them come before us before.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Surplus
Can we
property.
There are
maybe
two
review
separate
that?
But real estate, what I'm saying is surplus
Separate
real
policy.
estate. That's the only policy that I'm aware of where we have to notify other public agencies is our surplus real estate. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm
No,
just,
those are
in the
two
years I've been
separate
here, I
policies.
don't recall us putting a backhoe up and going through, because it's a tedious process to do that.
Yeah, we actually have two. And so, this one, I think the last time it was done was back in 2018, is what I could find.
Mhm,
And then
yeah.
prior to that, it was a few years before that, and it would list out the equipment. It's hard to identify what the value is gonna be, because we know what the value was when we originally purchased it. We don't know what the disposal value is gonna be. The process in general is you as the board, because this equipment would have been purchased with public funds, right? You would approve the ability for us to go forward with surplus, and that's what today is. Then the next is that public agencies would then be able to identify if any of those items they could use. And then you kind of keep going until you get to the point of just, we're gonna auction them off. So the current policy says that it would be through a public auction. There's online portals, there's companies that will do it. It just depends on if there's resources available internally to handle that auction going online, or if we need to actually hire someone to do that as a consultant or contractor. And then the monies received from those disposals would come in as discretionary funding. So this is just the first step in us even making that effort to go forward. And then real property.
So you're saying that what we're discussing here today, we're going to offer up to public agencies?
For sure. So what I'm gonna do is talk to Matt Weber to talk about if there's any limitations. At the county, it was very clear under the government code that we had to follow. We absolutely had to issue it, it's like order of operations. So it would be offered up to public agencies first, then it would go out to public. And employees at the county were like off, like they could not bid on any of it, they couldn't take it out of the landfill, it was just a big no-no. So our policy was very detailed and very stringent on how that needed to go. This one is a little more open, so I need to identify with Matt if our policy is just our policy because the board adopted that policy and that's how it was worded, or if it's actually based on a particular code section that we have to follow.
So we have a lot of discretion on the way the policy is written right now. And there are two
For
separate
equipment.
policies for equipment, and real property. There are two separate.
They're two
policies.
separate policies.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And so we really don't have to offer this up to public agencies.
We don't necessarily, we
And
have.
we could do that by running one simple ad in the enterprise
Yeah,
Right.
and saying, these are available
Yep.
if anybody wants, or we could even have our own auction if we wanted.
yep,
We
And
can
then we
just
wouldn't have to
send out
tr-
the list that we've just
we could send out the list that we
included
have.
in.
And we wouldn't, And in that case, we wouldn't have to move the equipment. We could have, which might be a savings, because it's gonna cost us, $5,000 to move this stuff down there. We may not get 10,000 for all this stuff.
Right.
So it could just be a wash. So we may want to think about, lining stuff up over here. It's just a thought. I mean, make it easy. Then if whatever doesn't go, then we take to,
Yeah.
Sacramento.
Can we review the policy before we accept these changes, so we can make some changes to the policy so we know it can be effective for this particular request? And I'm thinking, you could email your list to the special, the districts in our area via email. And if somebody's interested, say so, and if not, then you move forward to doing some of the other things you talked about. But if that's not in the policy, should we update our policy first, maybe at the next meeting? And then after that policy is updated, then we come back to this and approve it, so we know that these could be, offered to a public agency.
The current policy does address public agencies being able, like, that's an avenue.
So if we say we'll accept this, as long as you give it, offer it to the public agencies local first, and if you do that, then we're okay to accept surplusing these, as long as you do that first and then go through the regular steps.
So my recommendation would be along those lines, if the board would accept the list that we have here today, we'll bring the policy back to the finance committee at the next finance committee meeting to address it in the process in more detail, and if there's policy changes that need.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to hold off on getting rid of these. You guys know how the board feels about it, so.
Well, I would make a motion then that we
Well,
go ahead
we're
and.
not through with the discussion yet.
But let me just finish what I was saying. I would make a motion that says we would go ahead and surplus this as long as you were to offer it to local public agencies first. That's how I would say it if we made a motion.
Okay, but I think, Rebecca, you mentioned that because this surplus issue has, we talk about it a lot, it seems like. Do you remember a couple?
Certainly today we are.
No. It was just, when did you say, just a couple of years ago, we
2018.
talked about our,
And we did two then. I mean, we did then as well. And I like Cindy's idea of,
Well, it's exactly what they're proposing, so.
yeah.
okay.
We're staff and I are talking, we're all talking about the same thing.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and,
I'll make a motion that we accept surplusing these items along with you offering it to the local public agencies first via email. And if there's no response, then you move forward with whatever you feel is the right way to do it, based on our policy, our current policy.
Second.
So we do have a resolution in the packet for approval of this list. So I guess my request would be that we approve the resolution as
Right.
it's drafted, with the understanding that we will
Yes.
go through that process.
right.
That's it.
Well, I think, isn't what Cindy's recommending is a minor change to the resolution to, an
we
edit, if you will, to add in, just to make sure that it is offered to other agencies in the county prior to it being disposed of at auction.
Okay, we can change the resolution, or we can leave it as is and accept that as direction to staff as to how we proceed.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter to me.
We have a motion in a second,
Yeah,
so unless you want to
we've done
amend it,
that.
let's
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah, okay. Call the roll, please. Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, now you can sit down, Dave.
Damon, just real quick,
don't
Damon,
sit down.
there's also the guy that used to have the auction yard in Galt, but they just do online, even Bar None does online auctioning now. They don't, I went and looked at some equipment over there, and they're doing it all virtual, but I'm just saying, we may not have to move that equipment to sell it by auction. It's just something to think about.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely pursue that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
One more question. Are you going to bring that policy back at some point soon? I'd like to
Yep,
see
we will
that.
bring it to the
I like
finance
the
committee, yeah.
county's
I think it's time to revisit it.
Okay, thank you.
Every couple of years, we,
Yeah.
okay, going on to new business, 4A, discussion and update for the district-wide enterprise resource planning project. Rebecca?
Okay, so we just wanted to give the board an update on where we're at. We discussed this at length during budget hearings. It's been talked about at the finance committee. We talked about it again in the finance committee, so we were giving you an update where we stand. What we decided to do is, we started a steering committee. That steering committee it's made up of all different staff, management, line staff, HR's in there, just kind of a good mix of people that can kind of help direct the discussion and the collaborative efforts that we're trying to make in terms of the ERP situation with the district. What we talked about is things just weren't working with our existing software, and we had those conversations at length. But in addition, there was a lot of issues with our current workflow processes. There were just breaks in the process. So that was causing confusion and frustration from staff and customers and management and everybody. So we kind of stood back and discussed what makes sense for the district, not just for today, but tomorrow, going forward, as we grow, technology changes. And so we kind of used that as the catalyst for the conversation going forward in terms of this. We're not just talking about, do we stay with Springbrook or go to Tyler? We needed to talk about, here's where we are today with the resources that we have today, and where do we want to see ourselves going forward. And even though in this kind of first phase, we might not be making changes with HR and payroll, we may want to in the future in another phase. Or even though we're not quite ready for this particular piece of activity, it would be nice for the customers or nice for our staff, make the process just easier and smoother if that was available at this point in the future. So we looked at that, we had a lot of conversations, a lot of dialogue about it, and so we finally made the decision on Friday, August 28th, we can't stay with the current contract. And we all unanimously decided we needed to move forward with Tyler, which was a lot of the conversation that we had during the budget. And this also kind of frames the order in which we're going to do this. So we needed to look at utility billing, or the customer information system is probably going to be in the forefront of that project because we have the AMI, AMR project going forward very quickly. So, I think it was a really good team event to try to get to that realization and understanding. Staff are really excited about it. They're kind of looking forward to changes in how they're doing things, recognizing that also means we might be changing some of our outdated policies in order to make some of these things happen. And we're looking at things in a more holistic manner. It's not just what I do on a day-to-day basis, but it's having that conversation and understanding of what I do impacts you or you, and making sure that we're all thinking that way. So we are moving forward in that direction. We have discovery calls that are in the process of getting scheduled right now. Contract to review will be coming in the next week or so, and we'll start working through that internally to identify any changes or plans that we need to make. And then I went over the costs, which are just basically what was in the budget to begin with. And then just kind of went through what we're looking at in terms of modules that will be addressed in this particular phase. We're also looking at, and I think I had mentioned this through the budget meeting as well, kind of a more holistic document management. So all the file cabinets that you walk by down hallways, looking at trying to get those scanned in an electronic format, so it's easier for all of us to find what we need to find. And then in terms of discussion on the, you're talking about, well, do we have a list in terms of all of the inventory that we have out there and kind of a replacement plan and, you know, are we thinking of all those things? And we are, but Damon's right, they're all in spreadsheets. And so part of this also is identifying a better way within the technology that we have in order to make that plan. And so we don't have, Springbrook does not have a very good, robust fixed asset system or inventory system. So Tyler is going to be able to help us with that. So we'll have a more readily available, manageable, trackable system in order to identify those end-of-life periods for infrastructure and equipment, so we can have a wider conversation in terms of what's coming down the pipe. And that is about it for that ERP system.
Question, Cindy?
Okay, I'll start.
She's
So
got tons
I'm
of-
glad to hear you guys made a decision. I think that's great and all that. So, one of the things I'm wondering, do you have a timeline as when you're gonna start implementing and then when you're gonna end? Have you even gotten that far yet?
Yeah, we know it's gotta be in two kind of phases. So the first, we're gonna focus on the utility billing side.
Mhm.
And then we're gonna deal with finance after that.
Okay,
Because we have to try to get the utility billing aligned with that meter change out. Because right now, Springbrook doesn't give us the ability to change those meters out, aside from doing it manually. And we just can't change out 13,000 whatever meters.
yeah.
So we're really gonna focus on trying to get that side done. We're thinking, you know, maybe 5 months for the
Okay.
utility billing from the time that we start.
Start.
And then finance will be after that.
Mhm.
Tuolumne County did theirs, it was about the same, like 4 or 5 months for the utility billing, and then I think that it was another 4 months for the finance side of it.
Good. And so you think you'll be starting this fiscal year?
That's what we're shooting for.
Awesome. And then, where it says the Tyler Content Manager, I'm not sure what that is. Is
So
it
that's
your?
that's the document management. So that's the ability to stop having, you know, paper invoices. They will
Oh.
be stored electronically, or contracts would be stored electronically. Everything that we're physically having to touch paper for,
Mhm.
that is currently then making its way into the finance system, or making its way into, you know, for agendas, or making its way into, you know,
Well, it could
purchases of
be-
some sort.
Could be copies of like the customers that have the agreement to get a discount, all
No,
that's
those
right
are
there
there.
in their file, awesome. And then one other thing, I think it's only one other for the moment. You're looking at hosting it, or having Tyler host it, which I
Yes.
think is good. And with the laws and protecting customer information, that's all on them now, we don't have to
Yep.
worry about it, okay. That's it.
And then with that, also, because we've had the conversation about Paymentus, and it's not real time, and so I've been fairly hesitant, because the initial pricing for Tyler's preferred vendor that would be integrated with the system, I wasn't real happy with the pricing. We've gone back and forth, and it looks like their solution would be about $2,600 less per year than what we're paying for Paymentus. It's not a ton, but it's better than a poke in the eye.
For what we're paying
And
for what we're paying for what?
for the payment processing on Paymentus, for customers' online payments.
So, and right now, that's what we absorb the cost.
We absorb all those
So
costs.
we could still consider at some point, if somebody wants to pay with credit card, they could absorb that dollar cost, whatever that is.
So here's the caveat with that. So right now, the reason our pricing is what it is because we are a utility and we are using a utility interchange rate. The utility interchange rate is a much lower merchant rate for Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover. It charges a flat fee, instead of like a 3% or 2% or whatever it is of the transaction. We get that rate because we're absorbing. So if we decided as an agency to stop absorbing, and pass those costs on to the customers, those costs would probably double or triple for the customer.
You know, my complaint, if you will, don't we budget like 80,000 for this type of stuff? So that's $80,000 that I don't believe every customer benefits from. And that's where I think if it was pushed back to the customer, whether it's $1 or not, and you could probably negotiate that with somebody, and I could refer somebody for that where it's cheaper. I just don't think, because it's not something that all ratepayers benefit from, I don't think we should be spending $80,000 a year. I think it should be on them. We could use that $80,000 a year somewhere else.
We can definitely have that conversation, you know, at the finance committee. Just be aware, if we change that, the cost go to the customer would double or triple. So, if we're paying 80,000, it's gonna be 160,000, so, you know.
But we're also still, we're trying to encourage that behavior.
We're trying to encourage it because the flip side is they're gonna send checks or cash. And when they send checks or cash, then that actually creates a burden on staff. And we would actually have to probably then look at staffing, because then we're gonna have that.
I think you should do an experiment and find out. I can pretty much, I believe that everybody wants and will pay that convenience to do a credit card because of the benefits they get by using their credit card. So I don't, you know, I mean, yes, you're right, there'll be more checks to enter, but we do have employees for the actual, we use another system for it. But I don't know, I just think it's something that we need to look at. I think it's a lot of money. And, you know, if we have a lot of that coming through, I think there's more ability to negotiate with these, the clearinghouse people, whoever's doing those payments. But that's not really tied to this, but I did have one more question since I'm talking again.
No, your time's up.
I know. The annual fee, when will that start? After first year? After
Not
what?
until, it's not until implementation.
Okay.
So that's based on all of the modules being fully implemented.
Yeah, yeah.
So the licensing doesn't start until we actually do implementation. So, you know, in the first phase, that won't be the full 65, it's gonna be whatever, because that's an annual.
And then what is Springbrook's annual? It's pretty close to that, isn't it?
So
Don't
Springbrook,
get anything.
because we were looking at going to a hosted solution and integrating, we were gonna be looking at about $46,000 per year. Plus, we wouldn't have the content manager, so we would also have to pay $8,800 per year for Questus, so we're gonna be able to get rid of that. And then we also have additional costs with Paymentus. So it ended up being about, when you looked at everything, I think it ended up being about a difference of $5,000 or $6,000 between
So
the two.
what is the current rate that we pay for using Springbrook as is? That's what I was kind of looking for.
27?
Okay, Springbrook is
Well, you still don't get-
27,000 annually?
It doesn't work.
It doesn't, right, exactly,
And it's hosted on premise.
yes.
And so we can't, we have to
You have all the
change that.
security stuff to do and all kinds of other regulations by housing that, yeah. Okay, I will be done now.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions, just to try and understand all these words. There's Paymentus, there's Springbrook, Paymentus, Springbrook, Questus, and now is Tyler replacing all of them?
Yes,
Okay, and so you said Springbrook is about 27,000 annually, Paymentus is,
we pay.
and you said that you just gave the difference, so what is the total
We
annually?
pay about 80, I think this year it's gonna be about $88,000.
With the extra stuff that we pay for Paymentus?
No, that is just Paymentus. That we
Okay.
pay Paymentus about $88,000 a year. We are looking at, if, moving over to OpenEdge, it would be anywhere between 25 and.
Moving over to
26.
where?
The.
Open Edge?
Which is.
Is that
the-
Tyler?
It's the module under Tyler.
Okay,
So instead of paying 88, we would pay 86, 85.
and that's in addition to the 65,000 for Tyler annually?
Yep. And that's what we pay of an open and above Springbrook right now.
Wait, Springbrook's 27,000 annually,
Plus, we pay 88,000 of Pimentas.
and we're getting rid of both of them.
Yeah.
Okay. And Quistest is replacing, the next item you have coming up on the agenda also is going to be replacing Quistest 2.
So it's kind of to kill two birds with one stone. So we will be able to get rid of Questus. And right now, we're using Questus for two things. One of them is archiving the actions that the board takes, whether it's ordinances, resolutions, board packets, okay? And so staff, which at this point is pretty much Rebecca and I, we will use Questus. It's not a very user-friendly system. We will use Questus to try to go and find old resolutions and older board packets. Technically, Questus, when it was originally licensed, was supposed to be the district's document management system.
Like
And-
policies?
Everything,
Okay.
customer records, invoices, contracts.
It's a digital, go open a file drawer and get
HR
what you want.
files, everything. It was
Organized.
supposed to be the district's document management system. It doesn't integrate with anything that we do. So Tyler will be able to handle all of the document storage that pertains to the functions that will happen in Tyler. Customer information, purchasing information, contracting information.
All the
inventory,
AMR
all of
stuff
that,
too?
Yes.
Okay. And our policies. That'll be,
Yes.
okay. That big binder that we have to update every time we get a new resolution and create a new policy, that could go away and they could get an electronic version of that eventually?
We'll need it to the next item.
Right,
yes.
okay. Okay, and the word enterprise, how is that associated with this whole thing?
It's looking at things from a holistic.
Holistic.
Okay, so you say enterprise meaning the entire district and
agency.
almost everything that we do within the district financially or, okay,
Any operation that we do. So instead of just looking at finance or customer service, we're looking at a bigger picture of that.
and my final question is kind of a touchy-feely question, because at one point we did hear that there were several staff, even though there's only 2 people left on staff, there's probably a whole lot more that are affected by this, that there was a question here at this level anyway as to whether or not this was, but it sounds like that this was a good idea or it's going to be negatively affecting them and their jobs. But I know the steering committee has 100% buy-in. Is that reflected up from ground level?
Yes,
Okay, so there's been a lot of outreach then, obviously, to bring everybody into the fold that this is a good idea.
there has. There's
Okay,
been
great.
an enormous amount of discussion and collaboration. And what we needed to try to do, and this is what the point of the steering committee was, we need to take off our, this is my job and this is what I do and this is how I am impacted, and look at it from a bigger perspective on how is this going to impact the district overall.
I did see that in here, and I want to commend management staff on getting that started, and this seems to be a slow process. I think it's a great idea, instead of shoving it down the throats, getting buy-in and then going at it. And I mean, and that's awesome. Just seeing the way the steering committee is, has these other steps to take before it is even implemented or even purchased, or, awesome, great.
Yeah, and that's actually a point I wanted to make, if I can jump in here. I just want to acknowledge Rebecca. Stacy also had a huge hand in that, but also all the members of the steering committee, because there was some skepticism at one time about whether this was the right way to go or not, and just what it all meant. Because it really, I can't really overstate how significant of a transition this is going to be in terms of all of our business practices. And so if we didn't have buy-in from staff throughout, several different departments that are really going to be impacted by this, then implementation wouldn't be successful. And I really appreciate, especially the staff that was skeptical about this transition, coming to the table, voicing those concerns. Rebecca set up they had a screen share session with TUD, who has recently gone through this transition, to answer questions, multiple demos with Tyler, just a really extensive process to work through this, all of those questions, and at the end of the day get to a point where, yes, everybody was on board with it. And there's still some concerns, there's still some questions. Implementation is going to be really complicated, and it's going to have to be done very deliberately. But
So when you said the word unanimous here, and you wrote it down that it is a unanimous choice by everyone on the steering committee, that is awesome to hear. And the other great thing, if they actually do realize, if other employees do realize that what they do affects another department or another section or even another employee, and they realize it and care about it, that's even that much better. I mean, and if you do it the right way, it'll make their job easier too.
Yeah, just the fact that you're bringing them all together is, your biggest
Yep.
issue to face. I was concerned, or not, my question was, what kind of support are we going to be getting from Tyler when we go into this? I mean, are they going to have an office somewhere, or, because this is a big thing. This is a very large.
This is a
It's
big
huge.
deal. So they will live with us for a little while, and we will have a lot of homework. And, we have very frank conversations with everybody in the steering committee. I don't think there's a single person at the district that won't be impacted by this. And so it was making sure that everybody understood that, and that everybody, respected that as well, because we are going to go through a transition time, and we're going to be doing a lot of training, and so things are going to be a little slower during that transition time, and making sure that it was clear and understood for everybody in the district that we're all working towards the same kind of end game, but just to be patient across the board with everyone and being supportive of everybody through this. And so, and I think it was also important that, they heard us say, if a policy is the reason why we can't get from point A to point B, policies can be changed. There are things that we'll have to take to the board and have changed. There will be outreach that we'll have to do, but at the end of the day, it's going to be better for all of us. And so we really tried to have very open dialogue about that and be understanding of the concerns, and a lot of the concerns were, I'm going to have to learn a new system, and my process is going to be different, and customers might be frustrated for a period of time, and another department might be frustrated, but just making sure that we supported that whole process and that we're going to be a team at the end of the day. So I think that's what really drove everything home.
I would just add too, the steering committee is not going away.
No.
It's going to remain and a really important part of the implementation process, not just for this implementation process, but for a lot of other business practices and IT solutions that we're upgrading. And I think it's critical for that group to come to the table and really challenge us to make sure that we have thought through all of the implications of what we're doing and make sure that we're going in the right direction. So we need to, the purpose of that group is to make sure we're taking advantage of the institutional knowledge that our staff has as we go through implementation. So that group will continue to serve that purpose. Everybody has the opportunity to voice their concerns. It's the whole intent is that it is an open forum, regardless of where you sit or what office you're in or what department you're in. If you have a concern about this or the AMI, AMR process or any of the other things that we're implementing, we want to hear those concerns from staff as early in the process as possible so we can address them.
This steering committee, is there rotation through the steering committee, or is it going to stay intact, or what, how do you?
I think we have a pretty good subset of the organization, drawing from different departments. The people that really, as Rebecca said, this is going to affect everybody, but it'll affect some more than others. And the ones that are most affected by this, that have the deepest understanding of these systems, are the ones that were selected for that steering committee. But we've also, it's not necessarily set. If somebody else feels like they really need to have their concerns heard, and they don't feel like the people on the steering committee are raising those concerns, then we're going to be open to input from everybody.
Okay. Jeff, any?
I have nothing to add.
Rex?
Michael, I'm sure that you remember, 6 months or more ago, there was a young man from the motor pool here that sat in the back of the room, and he specifically addressed this Springbrook and why isn't Springbrook good enough and everything. I just want to make sure that when you say all departments are able to participate or are being engaged, is that young man convinced?
No, we didn't let him back in the room after that. No, he was actually speaking as a union representative. He's part of the union leadership, and he was speaking on behalf of some of the other union members. So he is not on that committee, but the folks that he was representing that day are. And those are the ones that were skeptical about the value of this, and have come around in support of it, and are really a critical part of the team of implementing it.
Okay, because in the length of time that I've been on the board, I have just heard little snippets of comments being made by operations and those folks up there in administration. They don't know what they're doing, and so
God, I've never heard that.
Yeah,
No, me neither.
but,
In the
well,
last
maybe,
20 minutes.
maybe they don't say that in your district.
So what we wanted to make sure is we have a good cross-section across operations, administration. When I talk about administration, I mean customer service and finance. We wanted HR involved in this. We wanted, whether it's, it doesn't matter. Like whatever department or level of staff can bring a good conversation to that committee and concerns. We wanted that to be there and participate, and let's have an open dialogue and hash through what some of the issues are. I think what we're finding is, when they're not at the table, there's misinformation that can happen, or misperception on who's doing what and who's saying what. And so when we have that dialogue in those meetings, we can hash out that, oh, I thought you guys were talking about this way over here. I didn't realize you were only talking about that, one green widget that happens every great once in a while. So it's helping kind of, I guess, put sunshine on everything and make sure that the right information is getting to the right people.
Well, Michael was praising you a moment ago, and I want to extend my appreciation, because I really honestly don't think this could have been done without you.
Yeah, I agree.
Good going.
Thank you. So that was the update we wanted to give. We just wanted to give some good news to the board that we are moving forward. And now we're gonna start running, because
Yes, you are.
we have to get going on that one.
It'll be worth it.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have any public comment, any more director's comments? Nope. Okay, and so you're still on.
And still on, so we're gonna talk about the Muni Code project. So this also is tied with Questus. So like I said, when Questus was originally licensed, the intent of it was to fully encompass all of the electronic storage of all of the paper documents for the district. And that didn't quite happen. So what ended up happening is we continued to operate with paper in every aspect of what we do, and then Questus, for the most part, was utilized as an archive tool for the ordinances, the resolutions, and the board packets. So what we have all quickly identified is we can't really find all the resolutions or the latest version of the resolution or ordinance or whatever. And so depending on whose desk you go to, they might have a different file. If we're lucky, Rebecca has, you know, the latest and greatest, but sometimes one of us will have it and then we'll give that version to her. So we really needed to focus on how do we get all of this information together in one area, electronically stored, have version control on it, understand what the history was of these actions that happened, identify kind of what was the staff thoughts or the board thoughts in terms of when these were happening, the history of our legislative actions. And so we don't really have that right now. So we talked a lot internally about, well, what could we do? We could store things on, you know, electronically scan everything, store everything internally on a folder, or put it on a internal website, but everything came back that it was going to take a lot of administration and a lot of management, and we still were going to be lacking some of the tools that would be available if we went through with a software company that can handle this for us. So then we started looking at software companies and what they could offer, and we found MuniCode. MuniCode is they're just like a codification, that's what they do. They're just a codification company, and they host all of this information. It's relatively inexpensive for what you get, and it gives us the ability to have one place where all of this information can be stored, and we don't have to worry about, you know, if there's 5 other versions somewhere. And it also gives us the ability to know, okay, this is the version currently, but what was the version prior to that? What was the version prior to that? And as time goes on, we'll be able to have that information. So we're definitely not utilizing Questus the way that it was ever intended for this district. And, you know, it's kind of halfway served its purpose for an archival tool in terms of somewhat giving us the ability to have things in one place, but it just is kind of hit and miss in terms of the ability to search for things and identify what we're really looking at. So the conversation, and we also looked at the demo, and we got some pricing information from them, and we had selected MuniCode as the option. It was included in the budget, and so this was already included in the budget. We knew we needed to do something, we just weren't quite sure at that time exactly what. It's $13,800. Annual licensing cost is just under $1,200 a year. And we also get rid of Questus, which is $8,800 a year. So, I mean, we kind of save costs here, and we save costs on the Tyler project. But we gain a lot by switching over to a different software. So this gives us the option to, you know, if we wanted to make these codes available to the public, we certainly can. But it's all hosted. We don't have to worry about storing it here. It can be available just to us internally, but it gives us a lot of value for the money.
Can I ask a couple questions? Who is our customer that we give codes to?
Who is the customer that we give?
Yeah, who would request that?
Well-
Look, I need to have a code here. I need to know what your code is for this application.
Many times what's happening is we get calls specifically for customer service, and I'm sure it happens in engineering as well, where the customer will ask, how come I'm having to do this?
So it's plan check. You do a plan check and you tell them you got to comply with this certain code.
And rules and regs for customer service is huge. And so it's
Because
trying.
I've used this MuniCode before when If I've made an application, they tell me I gotta comply with, a fire code. And all they ever do is they just say, go comply with fire code, dash, 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 15 numbers.
Right.
There's never an explanation, and you gotta go search all this stuff. And this, I haven't found this to be, you can get through it, but I just don't want this to be an excuse for our staff just to spit out a number and tell people to go comply with it.
I think it's not so much, I don't see as much of an issue when it's a code, like like a construction code, standard code.
Well,
that-
Uniform Building Code, Title
Right.
24, something like
It
that.
more has to do with our legislation. It's rules and regulations and ordinances and resolutions that we established as a district, that they're ours. They're not dependent on state or
So
federal
this
law.
also would be, I keep thinking this, are we gonna include our building standards in this?
Not currently,
Not
so
currently.
this is for the policy manuals,
Okay, so
essentially,
this is
the
just,
binders.
this is just resolutions, and then when we make a decision, the customer comes, they have a concern, a complaint, or a request, we tell them, these are the rules you have to comply with.
It won't necessarily include the resolutions and the ordinances themselves. It will include the policies. So when the board adopts a policy by resolution or ordinance, it's the policy itself that will be
So this is really a shame, because I've kept my policy handbook up, as you all know. It is up to
Look
date.
how much, and I think I understand what you're saying, and we would not, this is not a way for us to get, it's not a shortcut for staff to have to avoid answering questions for customers. For the most part, I think this is going to be a really useful tool for us internally, more so than externally.
Well, getting back to my use of this Municode thing, are we gonna be able to provide them a direct link to Calaveras County, or do they have to go through and go through type in the county and the state, and, because this is a massive, there's a lot of, every county, every city, everything,
Right.
they're on there.
Right.
I'm requesting that we provide them a direct link to that section that applies to us.
Well, no, ours would be on our website. You would go to our website, and if
Oh, they don't have to go into this website to
No,
accommodate.
it would be on our website. There would be, if it's something, because initially I think it's just going to be internal, and we'll evaluate whether this is something that we make available
'Cause
externally on our
I can
website.
give you an example, like I've typed in, like, I forget which municipality, I think it's a fire code or something in Stanislaus County when I was trying to figure out what they wanted. And this, the Municode pops up first. You could try to go through the Stanislaus County and try to, maneuver through their website and all that stuff. But this pops up first.
Right,
So
so,
then I spent, 45 minutes trying to get through this.
Municode is something I've used because, I'm sure you've all have seen it. It's most cities and counties use Municode, and so I'm familiar with it from past experience. And you can go that route where you go directly to Municode because of all the different jurisdictions that they host. But for the most part, if I'm going to Calaveras County and I want to find a zoning ordinance, I'll go to their website that will link you to the Municode
To their specific section.
for Calaveras
But
County.
for Calaveras County.
Right.
Yes.
So that's what we would do.
So they don't
here.
have to navigate us, they don't have to navigate Municode.
You would go to
They go directly
CCWD's
to the
website.
link that's gonna.
That would take you there.
I get it now.
And the biggest issue, I think, where a lot of staff are struggling is, I've got this policy that's based on this resolution that the board adopted in 1976. And then someone else in a file, and so that's what we're telling, that's the guidance that we have. And then someone else finds, oh, hey, I was cleaning out a file cabinet, and I found this one, and it was adopted in 1985. And we don't have, we're struggling identifying what's the latest policy information. Because there's, this section was determined by this resolution that
Sure.
got passed here versus this section was passed when this resolution was done here. And the other thing that Municode can help us with is, as they're going through it, they can say, hey, did you guys happen to notice this section is in conflict with this section?
Oh, that's interesting.
How do they,
And we find that-
how do they do that?
Because as they start going through that kind of codification, they're looking at organizing it, and they start identifying all of the pages that we're going through when they have conflicts, and they can even have conflicts with laws that we're supposed to follow, but they also can have conflict internally. So they're going through that. It's kind of like organizing all of your paperwork, right? And
Yeah.
as they're going through that organization, they're also looking for similarities and things that would cause a conflict.
I'm betting we're gonna find a lot of
We-
that.
We already, we
Yeah.
did
Well,
find-
that brings up a point. We never bring resolutions that we need to abolish. And I'm sure we have plenty that we need to just say, you know, we don't need this anymore, it shouldn't be on our books at all.
Or that's where the new resolution or new ordinance that we adopted,
Per oversee.
But it doesn't always do
yeah,
that.
no, you're right, we don't get rid of those other ones. That binder should, I'll bet you should be half the size of it is if we did exactly.
Usually it's
what
just
you-
an amendment to the existing.
It's an
resolution.
update, yeah,
Yeah.
it would typically replaces and supersedes
But
previous.
then so the other ones are in a different place, talking about something, in a different
They
section.
become part of the legislative history essentially, so that if you do need to go back, if you get, if there's a question as to why the policy changed and when it changed, sometimes it
What
is
the
very
intent
important to
was.
have that legislative history so you can see how the policy has
And
changed over time.
even if we just got that binder in a electronic form and could do a word search,
Yeah.
that would save.
So that's essentially what this is.
Yeah.
It's just putting it in an electronic form in a way that is much more organized and easier to access than we could do ourselves. Like I said, this is something I've used before when we looked into it, and I assumed the cost was gonna be much higher than it
Yeah,
is
this
for the
is-
service that
this
they
is-
offer. And so I personally was thrilled at when we received the quote from them. I think this is gonna be just another really nice upgrade for us.
This is
they
extremely
based-
reasonable
Yeah.
for
based
what
in
we're getting.
India?
Yeah. Cindy, did you have a
Are they based
question?
in India?
I'll let him finish.
Oh, Russ?
No.
Okay, so, I'm trying to kind of totally understand what it's doing, and I think I do. So we have policies,
Sorry?
Oh, play it, let it play.
and we have policies, and we have an ordinance, right? Or is the policies our ordinance, and you don't really have to answer that yet? And so you're gonna try and track using a coding system, which you already kind of do, but digitally. And so I think I'm mixing it up with an organization of codes versus data management. So let's say, an example is, hey Rebecca, when did we change the hours that we meet in the district? So could you go to this system and type in hours, and anything to do with hours, whether it was a resolution or policy, will come up for you to access?
The resolution itself won't. The policy will and it'll typically have a cite to the resolution or the ordinance that adopted that policy. From there, we would still have to track the resolution or the ordinance down for you, but the
But-
resolution itself won't come up.
Theory, that policy should have a list of all
It
the
will-
resolutions
so,
affected by
So what
it?
will happen, generally when you go to community code, you'll have, it's all these code sections in there. And it'll say, like, I don't know, there'll be a section called administration or something, or, I don't know, something. And finance and administration is what it might say. And then it'll say, or general, it'll say, like, hours of operations. And it'll go through like a little snippet that'll say, hours
Changed
of
on this
operations,
date
or
or
blah, 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 blah,
whatever.
blah. And underneath there will be a citing that says, 2004, ordinance 04, blah, blah, blah. It'll say, or resolution, it'll say what it is, like what caused that to happen. And so, so if I am going through, and I would do this all the time with Calaveras, I would say, well, like, you just couldn't figure out where in the world were they coming up with this particular fee type. And it wasn't in the fee schedule, but you would find just by doing a search through Code, and you would find all the places where this obscure fee is listed in there. And then you could search through there and you go, oh, it was this weird ordinance from 1963 that established this fee. Nobody really was paying attention anymore past that, so it missed it in the updated fee schedules, et cetera, but you could find it, if you knew what to look for.
So the thing, this is all sounds really good, but if you don't have all the information, what are they gonna do to make sure the information you give them is correct or up to date? Or you know what I mean? Because it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. If
Right.
you don't have all that,
Yeah.
the right stuff you need. I think if we say, well, we have to start from this point and move forward, okay, I understand that as well.
They kind of start from now and they move back, right?
And so
Because
they're gonna be going through papers that we have, hard papers and whatnot.
we're gonna be
Okay.
sending them the pages of information that we have, based on current, like what we currently have. Because that's theoretically where we're starting at.
That's why it's taking 10 to 12 months, and
Yeah.
it's going to be, we're going to have
Well, I
600
think
to
I'm still-
750 pages.
I'm still trying to mix it up with a data management, a searchable data management software.
So
I think it's
these-
similar, but still a little different from what I'm thinking I'm looking for.
They're
Yeah.
both electronic versions of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the content management that I'm talking about in Tyler is, you know, what was this invoice? You know, what exactly was this invoice that I paid, you know, ABC?
Could you
last?
search something like, when did we, this might be too easy, when did we put the meter in, the ag meter in for, you know, address 1234
No,
Elm Street?
Not in
Oh,
Muni
no.
County.
no.
In
But in the
Tyler,
data
yes.
management, yes. And then what about, when did when did the board approve this address not having to connect to the system or whatever? Anything
Like a
like that?
variance?
Yeah, a variance, I'd
No,
say, yeah.
not a, it's not, that wouldn't be a policy. You could pull up the board variance policy,
Mm-hmm.
and then, but for a specific action like that that applied to a specific
And
property,
that's
it
the
wouldn't be.
data
However-
management side that I'm
Right,
thinking,
so however, what
code's
I would
different.
say is on a variance, because generally those variances are specific to that particular
Address,
property,
yeah.
we would put that on that particular property.
And then you have that search capability, you know, let's see all variances for that property, and they would come up, kind of a thing, yeah, okay.
Okay, how will we reduce staff time for preparation, publishing, and record retention?
Rebecca can,
I mean, you guys have all the binders, and almost everybody in the office has them as well, so it's just the preparing.
The mass-
all of
The mass
the mass.
printing of
Yeah.
all of the updates.
Updates, yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I would encourage you to, you can go, I just pulled it up, it's very slow in here right now, so I don't think it makes sense for us to try to put it on the screen. But Calaveras County uses Municode. You can pull up all of their codes and, through their website and click on each code, and there's a parenthetical underneath each code section that tells you, so I'm looking right now at the adoption of their general provisions, ordinance 1304, section 1, 1980. So then it gives you that site that you could then, if you needed to go back and track, you know, well, I need to see the staff report that was attached to that ordinance when it was adopted. You would come to, that's not going to be in Municode. You would still have to come to us to
Do
track
data
that down.
management software.
But you would be able to search the codes in a way that is much more accessible, I think, than our current system, and much easier to update. And it'll be much lighter, too, than carrying those binders around.
I'm just kind of concerned with how accurate it's gonna be if we don't have the information currently. I think what you've been doing the last several years, that's all really good, but how far back? And then if they're gonna spend all these hours and it's only $13,000, is
Yeah,
that accurate? You know, they're gonna, unless they scan all the documents and make it search capability, which you can do, and pick out
Yeah.
anything.
Jeff can help with that, his binder goes back 20 years.
That's probably about the last time it was updated.
Well, it'd be nice not to have a hard copy,
Oh.
that, for us to go anywhere and look at policies. I'm surprised we don't have that already.
Well, and then with the other issue, when I first started here, I needed to update a policy, and I would ask her, where's the Word version of this?
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't one. So then,
Start over.
where's the PDF version that I can at least convert it to Word? All I have is a copy of a typed, so part of this is gonna be, kind of cleaning some of that stuff up and making it available where we will have everything in Word, where when we need to update a policy, it'll be easier for staff to actually have the tools in order to be able to update.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I do it where I work. 11 years now I've been organizing it. The thing is it's just, resolutions are here, minutes are here, and I wish there was one way to search within those documents, and right now I use File Explorer, so
Yeah.
it would be nice to have a software to
Yeah.
put all that in.
So this is
Yeah,
it.
that's more of a document management
Right,
system
which is
versus what
different
Unicode
from
is gonna
this.
do. That's right.
But this
Yeah.
starts the process of organizing and tracking it in a numbering system, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more comments? Director Thomas? No?
None.
Jeff?
Nope.
Russ?
No.
Any public comment? Okay. Thank you, and let's take 5.
I'll do that.
All right.
Please.
So the one thing that we can turn on is, when you look at it, it's got the ordinance number. They actually can turn a link on it, and then look at regular to the. So we can. We didn't have that.
4C, Brad Arnold, selection of consultant to develop 2020 urban water management plan update.
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon, directors. This is an update provided for the urban water management planning, following in our June 24th discussion, where we outlined the 2020 cycle for the 5-year update of the plan at the Board of Directors meeting. We closed our request for proposals on August 14th after that meeting, and we received 8 total proposals for interest in our urban water management plan update. Following that, we had staff review, primarily myself and GM Minkler, to look through and develop a scoring matrix and tools based on RFP-defined criteria to analyze and score each of the proposals based on criteria such as approach, schedule, total fee, and familiarity with our county and local resources up here. Ultimately, the highest scoring proposal was from Woodard and Curran. It was arguably the most thorough proposal, especially with regards to the new legislative requirements, which you may recall from that June 24th meeting. There's a lot that needs to be incorporated into this 2020 planning cycle that hasn't been in previous planning documents, and really conveyed to us the highest likelihood of being compliant and getting this plan reviewed and into DWR by the July 1st, 2021 deadline. Now, you may recall that RMC did our 2015 plan update. They were acquired by Woodard and Curran in 2016 after that plan was submitted and released. And so now this is going to help with regards to getting up to speed. We have a consultant that's already worked with us, understands our different service areas and system, and has done a plan update like this for us before. So a lot of that initial legwork is already done and working with this group. Now, in terms of cost, they provided us a not-to-exceed budget of $108,733, which I'm happy to report is under our fiscal year budgeted amount for this item. Our budgeted amount was $120,000, so we're saving nearly $11,000 if we ultimately select Woodard and Curran. And so, what we're asking today, given the fact that DWR did release their draft guidelines last week, which means we're still on track to have this due by July of next year, and so we need to move forward on this, putting this document together, is we're asking the Board of Directors to consider adoption of the draft resolution that's provided in Attachment A that lays out some of the urban water management plan requirements and would ultimately allow GM Minkler to execute the professional services agreement that's shown in Attachment C, and we would send Woodard and Curran the award notice provided in Attachment B. So with that, provide any questions on how we got to our selection of Woodard, or rather our recommendation of Woodard and Curran, or if there are any other general questions on the urban water management plan for the 2020 update.
I'll move for acceptance.
Second.
Oh, did you have a question first, Russ?
No, I was just gonna.
I
make a
have
motion.
one little
Oh.
question,
Go ahead.
and it's just probably a stupid question. I'm looking at the professional services agreement, and on termination, you know, either party may terminate this agreement. I mean, could anybody do X amount of work, collect so much money from us and say, oh, we're gonna cancel in 10 days? You know, and not give us a complete product?
It's a fair concern. I mean, we're quite clear in the RFP as well as the document. I believe the first page of the professional services agreement touches on this idea of putting together a complete 2020 urban water management plan update, which includes drafts to us by early spring next year, as well as getting the document to DWR by July 1st of next year. So while I do believe we allow them the potential to terminate, it's still understood between us and Woodard and Curran that this would be for a complete urban water management plan.
And is there any, so it has to be accepted and approved by DWR. So is there something written here that says if they kick it back for changes, they change it and it's still included in this price?
Our understanding, given that it's a not-to-exceed budget and that they've outlined that it will get DWR approval, is that if DWR comes down and asks us to change or adapt or revise anything, that would be included as part of this project.
Now, you're not certain, but you're just assuming it would be?
That's my understanding, given my interpretation.
It would depend on, I mean, I can't imagine DWR coming out with something so dramatically different than what's contemplated right now that they would be justified in changing the price. But that, it's not, you know, that's the kind of scenario I guess we could think of where, yeah, it would be fair for them to say, wait, we have to go back and redo this whole section because of new DWR guidance. So that wasn't included in the initial contract, but that's,
Okay, well, that's kind of not what I'm thinking. It's just like, okay, under the current guidelines, what they expect you to provide, if they feel that the plan doesn't have that provision, it's nothing new, you would kick it back and they would have to address it. And I'm going through this like with the EAP and stuff like that. So the contract does say that they will respond and make all those changes, as long as it's not like, okay, well, we changed our mind, now we want you to do this. And I just was wondering if something like that was included in here.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
although not explicitly, I do believe, part of what will be included in our urban plan is a checklist from the guidelines that lays out exactly what the requirements are and by section. So that's also part of our QA/QC checks to make sure that everything is addressed in there.
Very cool.
And I do want to commend you for leaving $11,000 on the table for Damon and Charles to spend later on.
You mean it's not just mine to play with?
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second?
You,
I seconded it. so.
okay.
So vote time? Public
Okay,
comment?
call the roll. Oh, public comment?
Just to point out, I do believe we have Katie Cole from Woodard and Curran on the line, who's worked with us on our past 2015 plan, as well as with UMRA and other types of efforts that we're involved with. And so she'll be my point of contact to work directly with her on there, but I don't know if there's any comment needed at this point.
She's on the line, Katie. Katie, we thank you very much for the work that you,
For the great work you're about to do.
Yes.
Just one comment. My pleasure. I look forward to working with the district again.
Just one comment, you know, when this is all over, it'd be interesting to put a price tag on the whole process. That, you know, there's just a few years ago, this didn't exist. You know, Calvert County takes almost no groundwater, we take very, very little groundwater.
Right.
We're gonna end up spending $500,000 on a mandate, you know, but yet to be seen how productive it is.
Well, just to clarify, this is not just a groundwater requirement. This is the 5-year rotation of the urban water management plan. So it'll require an assessment of all of our resources. But I think it's a good point that we should track not just the consulting costs, but all the costs that go into the project. So.
any further questions from the board? And no public comment? So, call the roll.
Director Cicada?
Yes.
Director Thomas?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Rutterman?
Yes.
President Underhill?
Yes,
Thank you, Director.
thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Okay, item 4D, Bob Goodwin, our senior civil engineer, discussion action regarding acceptance of the Jenny Lind service line replacement project.
Good afternoon, directors. I think this is on, right? On? I can't hear when.
Sounds
Yeah, I can't hear myself.
Just tap on it real loud.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I'm here to present this item, which is hopefully, after discussion, acceptance by the directors and the board for the completion of the construction project, the Jenny Lind, Kirby, Gabor, Garner service line replacement project. You have a number of documents in front of you. I want to point out there are 2 errors. One of them is fairly slight, one you should be happy to hear. The first is, when I wrote the documents, your agenda memo and the resolution and a contract completion document that the contractor would receive, I kept on using the word service lateral. It was corrected in most cases. It's service line. It appears correct in your resolution language, but in the actual memo, it says service lateral in some areas of text. The other item is the memo, which has the construction costs for our contractor, TNS West. That number is slightly in error. The change orders, or the cost changes to this project were about $4,500 less. I'm using the numbers that were arrived at with your contract change agreement that was signed last Thursday, which had not been finalized when the memo was prepared. I also have some slides if that was of some value.
I can't figure out how to get this up on the screen.
Right.
Damon, you have pictures for your report later on?
I do not.
Yeah, let's see your pictures then.
Any idea about it? I don't.
Could be that.
So while they're looking at that, I'll just try to give a brief overview. I think the board's familiar with this project. We've talked about it quite a bit. We have we have experienced significant leak issues down in the Jenny Lind distribution system. This project, these 3 streets are areas that distribution staff identified as the worst of the worst down there. Board approved the construction contract to replace, I think it was 120 service lines?
85 service lines that were replaced on Kirby and Garner. I have a map of all.
I like 120 better, but it was 85. I think at one point we talked about expanding the scope of the project to add more service lines.
When was this started?
Actually, it was right before.
So this year, it started this year?
Yeah, there was, we
2019.
had initially tried to kick it off last year. There were some delays, and so it started right before the shelter in place, which caused some additional delay. But the project is now complete. The punch list, I think, is also complete. And we are satisfied with the work that took place, and we hope not to have any issues with these 3 service lines anymore.
I apologize for working quite hard on this.
I just had one question, and this was on the change orders
Yes.
written into the contract. Did you have a certain percentage that they couldn't exceed, or, because I know
We did
that.
not, no, and
No
the
contingency?
change orders are something that we've gone back and forth with
Right,
over the
yeah,
last several
for
weeks.
years. That's been a,
Well, no, I mean, just for this project, there's been some back and forth is we did not accept all of the change orders that were requested.
oh, okay.
And so staff has very carefully gone through what the requests were to verify that they were legitimate change orders.
Legitimate, right.
And the ones that are included for approval here are the ones that we identified as legitimate.
But did Bob just say that this figure is 5,000 less than
Yes, I.
actually? It's gonna be
The
5,000?
number in the memo is correct.
46,729?
I use the number that is on your.
So almost exactly 10%. I mean, obviously, we would like to see no change orders, but it's not.
What are the
outside
change orders
realm.
related to?
Some of the, so one of them was related to the delay, because we initially, when the shelter-in-place orders first came down, we directed them not to shut water off. And so because of that, there was some delay. They had already mobilized, and so there was some additional cost because of about a 6-week delay, I think it was.
Yes, I actually have that now, so we have the slides. Okay, so again, it was 85 service connections on Kirby, Devore Street, and Garner Place. I actually gave you a little map there that basically highlights the services that were affected. Garner Place is on the left. North in all cases is upward on the screen, and then Kirby and Devore roughly parallel each other with Genuine Road on the left, if you can see. So I also just showed you the purpose of the project. There were a huge number of problems with the service line connections to our main line. Out there, the service is provided, our service goes through usually 6 or 8 inch AC pipe. And I had some photos of what sorts of problems that were discovered over time on those lines. I showed it as the good, bad, and the ugly. The one on the left is actually a service connection that was added at some later stage, and it's actually in good shape. The north stop and the service saddle is in good shape, and so was the polyethylene pipe. The middle one, the one I said was bad, that was an original tap that someone had put in on the AC pipe. However, the tap is on the connecting collar, which is not supposed to be done. That's against the original recommendations of the AC pipe manufacturer. And then finally, you can kind of see in the third, the ugly, is one of the worst cases where the little silver connectors you see on the pipe, well, those are
Repair claims.
repair claims, I should not think what they are. Plus, of course, it's spraying water down at the
Well, even the good hole's full of water. That's not good.
We these are from Papa, so it was our Vector trucks.
Right.
Someone had a water.
Oh, just
spraying water down.
so they can see it better? Okay.
Well, that's the only way we can get the slurry up into the back of the truck itself. So these were the numbers. This project was, we received bids last August 2019. We received only one bid, which there were no errors or inaccuracies in their bids, so they were the parent bidder, T&S West. The bid award amount was $460,800. This board, through resolution 2019-65, awarded the contract on a very auspicious day, September 11th, 2019. The project was completed late August. I put the 21st down, but it might be a day off. It could be the 22nd. In any case, the change orders that I have for that project are for $44,229.12, which is slightly different than
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's right.
It's 44. Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh, great.
So that is the correct amount. Those costs consisted of 3 change orders. If you look through all of the documents and relate to this project, there are actually 4 change orders. The second change order was a request by the district to get a cost for some additional work, which we did not accept, so it was never implemented. But numerically, they're labeled 1, 3, 4 as a result of the 2 never being adopted. The first one, which you were discussing before I got the slides, working related to basically a project, a work stoppage that occurred in April for about 8 weeks. And the contractor had some equipment out on the site, including, what do you have? Plates.
Trench plates.
Trench plates.
A lot of trench plates.
A lot of trench plates. The second one, which is the most significant change order, which is change order 3, which was the asphalt tonnage. The amount of tonnage used on this project was higher than the one that the value was provided in our bid documents.
Did our agreement with the county change during that time, or is that what caused it? or-
Well, yeah, the process is, basically our inspector goes out with their inspector, they look at the pavement in the field, and they mark it in the field, and then the final repairs are based on the actual field
I'm just wondering if the scope of the project changed with the county's change in the...
No, that didn't affect it.
In general, they are a little bit more shoulder work than was initially assumed with this project, and there were some areas that the county wanted us to repair, and then the trenches in most cases were a little wider than our estimate was when we prepared the value for the amount of tonnage that was in the bid document. And finally, the last item, there's a change order 4 for some miscellaneous items, plural. I think the most significant one was we had requested they repair or install a concrete driveway, which the totals were. These are the breakdown of the change orders. The first one related to equipment rental, $8,500. You can see the more significant ones, $1,000 for the additional asphalt and installation of the asphalt and all those sorts of things. And then finally, the last change order was for principally for the concrete driveway, which was an additional $3,700. Grand total being $505,029.12.
I move for acceptance.
I'll second.
Okay. Questions from the public? Nope. Seeing none. Okay, first and seconded, call the roll.
Director Cepeda?
Yes.
Director Thomas?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Biden?
Yes.
President Emerald?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Goodwin.
Good job, you guys. That was good.
Right, sorry about that. I sent her the PDF, not realizing that the
No problem.
actual slides were looking.
Are we gonna
That was
get, are
very
we gonna
nice,
do
thank you.
a short press release on this project to let everyone know it's completed? That we
Yes.
won't be in the neighborhood again?
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
Oh.
Darren's turn.
Your turn. Say something. What are we on now?
You
Oh,
have, you have 3 minutes for this?
I'll be quick.
Say reports.
reports.
Okay, great. Happy to give a quick update on the status of district infrastructure during this PSPS event. We had our Lakemont pump station up in the Arnold area. We experienced a failure to the on-site generator, so we had to bring in a trailer mounted to run that pump station. And we also blew a radiator hose on the generator at the West Point Water Treatment Plant, which we repaired post recognizing the failure, so within the next few hours. So all in all, as power is being restored to facilities now, we're coming out of this PSPS event. I would like to say that I think we've weathered the storm fairly well.
What is the overall story as of 3 o'clock? Do we know where we are?
In terms of restoration at this point in time, about an hour ago, I got an email from PG&E that said we had about 2,000 folks in Calaveras County that were still without power. And since then, I've received an update about restoration in West Point, particularly for the water treatment facility, and restoration for the White Pines maintenance shop. So I would venture to guess we're getting pretty darn close to full restoration.
Okay, then I can put my generator under the house.
Yeah.
Better put it in the entry
I would
closet.
Yeah, I would keep it close at hand. And then just to provide you guys with a few high points from this last month's operations report, we ended up having another line break and subsequent boil water advisory on the Techite pipeline up in Big Trees Village. And we're, I would say, there's approximately 3,000 linear feet that is actually being fed by both the Techite pipeline and the replacement ductile iron pipeline at this point in time. So knock on wood, we'll be able to weather the storm fairly well should there be any breaches here within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, well, you'll have to hear from Scott's parents, because I don't live there anymore.
We'll rely on you, Scott.
You know, I hear it, I'm not gonna pass it on though.
Yeah, understood. And another high point, we did receive the Gap Vax truck and we put it right to work. You'll note that in the Jenny Lind distribution system, there was 31 service line repairs completed using that piece of equipment. Incidentally, it was also used for the collections crew. Everybody's really happy with it. It's very fast, powerful, and efficient. So it's actually allowing our guys to get some work done much more quickly. And there was the timber harvest continued through the month of August at the Arnold Wastewater Treatment Plant. And where we sit currently, we have a couple more weeks of mastication, but that project really was beneficial for the district. With that, I'll take any questions.
I just have a question that hadn't occurred to me to ask this before. Was on this new VACCON truck, as it goes from different areas within the county where our facilities are, is that truck assigned to essentially one driver, or do they?
No, pretty much all the collections crew and the distribution crew operators that have Class A's, which is the majority, would drive the truck. The truck generally stays in the Jenny Lind Rancho Calaveras service area though. What we've done is we've brought both of the VACCON trucks, so this is a Gap Vax, and then the two VACCONs are now in Copperopolis. And the thought behind that is that the collections crew can now make use of one to address lift station issues and sewer issues, while the distribution crew can make use of the other for potable water issues. There has been conversation about bringing one of the VACCONs up to West Point for storage. We're still assessing that. We may do that for a couple months and then just as a litmus test. You know, leaks are often repaired kind of in groups in West Point, so it's not generally thought that the VACCON would be used on a daily basis like it is in Copper.
Okay, what is the difference between a VACCON and a GAT vac?
Well, so the Gap Vax that we purchased, well, they're two different brands. The VACCON company, from what I understand, is kind of one of the initial players in these vacuum trucks, in the vacuum truck game, and Gap Vax is somewhat of an upstart. The truck that we purchased is electric over hydraulic, and the VACCONs are they have a fan that actually provides the power for the suction on the tank itself, on the 8-inch hose. And right out of the gate, our folks have noticed, and I would venture to guess that VACCON would like to say on the contrary, but right out of the gate with this Gap Vax truck, we're seeing improved operation and power overall. Recognizing that the VACCONs that we have are somewhat old.
Hopefully you don't have anything against old.
Not at all.
Okay.
I
Any other
have
questions?
a question on, I'm looking, at your report, and my goodness, Damon, the number of electrical call-outs that you have is just, wow.
Yep.
And I wanted to know how many you're able to, use as, well, they're classified as electricians, so how many electricians do you have?
So we have 3 electricians that are in the electrical department, and we have an electrician in the mechanical department as well. And so generally, for most of the items that you see under electrical in the operations report, those are the 3 that are within the electrical department. They're all 3 electricians, and then 2 are also SCADA techs, we could call them, but they also do electrical work. Yeah.
Because just looking at it, going through, it's just all over the district.
It's all over the district. It's varied. It happens at all times of the day and night, and it's like I said, it's varied. They could go from restoring the program in a PLC with a laptop to replacing a float in a septic tank within, all before lunch, and multiple other items. And, I really appreciate their, how thorough they are with their department report, because I think it's important to illustrate to everybody how much electrical work there is out there and how much our folks do.
Well, I'm saying that I'm just, thoroughly, impressed by what they do. My
Yeah,
goodness.
they do a great job, and it just like yesterday, we had mechanics and electricians working.
Oh, yeah.
Past quitting time to make sure that everything was operating as needed, and all issues with generators were addressed, and everything was functioning properly, through this first PSPS go-round.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is the without PSPS list.
Right.
I would anticipate a longer one next month. And I think, for the record, our electricians would probably respond to your question of how many we have by saying not enough.
Yeah.
But they are a really highly skilled crew. For a small crew of three, all three of them have a tremendous amount of experience and are both, as Damon said, tech savvy when it comes to SCADA and computer communications, as well as the electrician side of the job. Really,
And how
really
long
highly
will
skilled.
your electrical crew stay together?
So.
You
they'll
looking
work-
at retirements, or
Say that again?
are you looking at retirements?
We're definitely looking at retirement for one of our electricians within probably the next 5 years.
Oh, okay, well, I thought it was, by the end of
Could
the
be,
year.
could be sooner, and knock on wood, the others don't have intentions of going anywhere anytime soon.
That's wonderful. No, that is just,
They work really well together, they work as a team, they can break off and work individually with other departments. They get along with all of the crews, intelligent, like Michael said, very skilled, and very effective.
well, they certainly, your entire crew has our appreciation, and,
Thank you, and I continue to relay that message. And they really appreciate that also. Thank you.
Good report, Damon, thank you, always.
as always, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I go back to my agenda and, general manager report.
Okay, just a quick point, just to follow up on the PSPS, is an event that we're experiencing right now. There was a lot of, I would say, optimism from PG&E that there would be fewer of these and of shorter duration. That was met by skepticism on our part, or at least on my part. And I would say, for the most part, this one has been pretty much like what we saw last year. I think maybe on this end of it, coming back online has probably gone a little bit smoother, and they've gotten it back online a little bit faster. But outside of that, it's more of the same, with the exception that we didn't have any in September last year. This is much earlier in the season than what we saw last year, and so it doesn't bode well for the rest of the fire season. But Damon and his crew have done a phenomenal job being prepared in advance, and then responding as needed when the incidents arrive. So they deserve a tremendous amount of credit for that. The electricians, the mechanics, the collections crew, the distribution, it's everybody in operations, just done a phenomenal job responding to these events.
And so fire season, the end of October, right?
Peak fire season is typically September, October. Last year, our PSPS events, I think we had one in October, but the other three were in November. So between now and it turns cold in December, I would say we're on notice. And along those lines, I'll just briefly mention that we are working with NCPA. Their annual tunnel outage starts in early October, and we expressed some concerns about doing that during a PSPS event or a potential wildfire event, because it puts us on our backup pumps at Hunters, which are unreliable, maybe a good way to put it, without standby backup generation. So they're responsive to that, those concerns. They're working with us on making sure we're going to be able to stay online during that time. So we just continue to learn and adapt and track all of our costs without much hope for reimbursement, but we'll continue to knock on those doors as well.
Just curious about when they put their tunnel maintenance period, how big is that biggest tank that we have at Hunters? Do we
The
ever
clear
fill
well
it?
at Hunters or in the distribution system?
The big tank that's there at the water treatment plant on
It's
Hunter
a big
Dam.
one,
I think it's just $1 million.
$1 million gallon.
Do we ever
tank.
fill it? Is it ever full?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it usually full? Do we keep it that, we go through that much water?
Yeah, so generally, we keep it, the clear well full, and then we'll adjust the tank levels throughout the distribution system depending on the time of year, and depending on water age. But it's funny you ask this question, we just talked about this morning, is anytime we receive indication of PSPS event, and now we're actually discussing any red flag warnings, where your operations is gonna just top all tanks off and tighten that set point between start and stop at all tanks.
Oh.
Just in anticipation.
Right.
Yeah, good.
Of the fact that you never know what's gonna.
And if they went out, if that tunnel, if they're, if they shut down their big tunnel and the tunnel tap wasn't in operation, how long could we use 1 million? I mean, how long would it take to use up 1 million gallons?
Less than 24 hours.
Yeah, and that was the worst case scenario that I was losing some sleep over, and that's why we reached out to Randy was, in the worst case scenario is the tunnel's offline, there actually is a fire, it's not a PSPS
right.
event, there
Yeah.
actually is a fire, and the pumps at Hunters fail, and now we have lost the ability to push water out into the system beyond the capacity of those tanks.
Okay.
And that won't last 24 hours if the hydrants are being drawn off of.
Right.
So that's the scary scenario that we want to make sure we avoid. NCPA has said if there's an actual fire, they're gonna, even if they're already in the outage, they're gonna shut it off, wrap up the outage as quickly as possible and get the tunnel back in service as quickly as possible, and they would work around a PSPS event as well. So that was the biggest concern we had, and they were very responsive to that, and we appreciate that. We're also, on our end, we're making sure that we are prepared with standby generation, and the electricians are already very familiar with the issues that we have there. So they have a plan to respond in that event, but it's just a scenario we would like to avoid, which is a good segue into one of the other items I wanted to touch on, which is a preliminary award from FEMA for the replacement of those pumps. So congratulations to Charles and Damon and everybody who worked on that grant application. It's a preliminary award, which typically means, yes, we're going to get it. We don't send out press releases until it's a final approval, which could be as much as 4 to 6 months. But we're pretty confident at this point we will get that project funded and be able to replace those intake pumps there. So hopefully this is the last fire season we go through with those existing pumps.
When will, back to the one you talked about before this, when will that generator that we're just authorized, when will it be online up there?
So that is just for the treatment plant. It wouldn't cover the pumps at Hunters. And I don't think we'll have it online this season. I don't know what's the time.
Yeah, so a couple different approaches we can take. Michael's correct. We won't be able to wire up the generator and station it at the water treatment plant prior to the midst of the PSPS and prior to the outage. However, it is in Calaveras County. We can't put it on a trailer, and we could deploy it to the pump station site if need be, or any other site that would fit the size requirements during any, event post-purchase, because it's here.
Okay.
So we'll make sure we have a generator that can be deployed for
That'd be good
those
to pick it
pumps.
up and get it ready. I mean, have it ready for
And
this
it is
season.
one of our options. So we have option A, like Michael says, is we have a generator tasked to go right to those pumps. And option B is if for some reason that generator fails, we have this generator.
Because our setup now is that at every facility, we have a generator.
Not at every facility. We still have approximately 10 or 12 sites, and they're very small, most of them, and they don't see a ton of demand. Usually they're wastewater lift stations that pump maybe once every 2 to 3 days. So but we can bring small backpack generators to those sites to power them.
Okay, but we have them where needed.
We have a choreographed dance in place to power up every site that we have.
How big is that generator on, at the water tank on Bigfoot Circle? Seems like an awfully big one for.
Bigfoot Circle is, is that Big Tree's 1, right? Big Tree's 1? Is it 4 and 5?
Seems huge for,
I believe it's 100 kW for
uh,
And so the one that you just authorized for purchase is at 550 kW.
okay.
Yeah, so when he says trailer for that one, we're probably talking about a low boy.
We're talking about a low
Yeah.
one, yeah, we're talking about it.
That's a
It's a big
That
generator.
seemed awfully big for, I mean, he seemed huge. And this one's a lot bigger than 5 times the power of it then.
Yeah, it's a beast. And incidentally, that generator, we have a 600 kW at Copper Raw, 600 kW at the Copper Water Treatment Plant, and an 800 kW at the Metamont pump station in Arnold.
Wow.
So it's not even the biggest.
It would be a good time to do a review and actually take pictures of some of that equipment so the public actually understands the massive effort that it is to comply with these shutoffs. I mean, it really would. I think that the public wants to know that, first of all, that we're prepared, but I don't think that certainly they don't understand the amount of power that we use.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a good opportunity, to talk about this, show some pictures of the equipment.
We did, that's a great
Pictures with
suggestion.
press
We-
releases.
We did a fact sheet last year. We did several press releases on this last year. We'll update that information, along with, I think, some pictures of the generators, just the details about the fuel consumption. The amount of power.
No, that's a great story. It's a
They're
great
striking.
story.
The numbers are striking.
What you guys do for for preparation and ramp down for this PS stuff, that's just a great story of
Yeah.
what you go through
Yeah, I
on a
agree.
daily, weekly basis every single time this happens, and what it's putting you through. I mean, it doesn't put down PG&E, what they're doing, but it just talks about what a great effort that has to go into making sure people get water and that the
Hey, Mike, you
wastewater
just
is
mentioned
pumped
that,
away.
the great job that the board has done to provide you.
Kidding aside,
Put his
it
name in
was-
the article.
Kidding aside, it was board decisions and I think if Bill Purley were here, he would take some of the credit for himself, but it was board decisions that put, the fact that we have, 90% of our facilities with standby backup generation.
And we started doing this during the Patterson fire. I mean,
Right, and
we
we're much-
recognized then that we didn't have we had areas out of water because we didn't have backup power.
And so those were very forward-thinking board decisions
yeah.
that came at a cost that we are now reaping the benefit from.
From our
'cause there are a
longtime
lot of
longtime
agencies-
board members have put in a lot of
Yeah.
thought on this process.
A lot
Oh,
of,
it's only gotta be the new ones, I'm sure.
a lot of water agencies are in much worse shape than we are, as hard as it is for us, and it is, and I'm really glad the board appreciates, it is a monumental effort. Even when everything's running, it is still a monumental effort, the logistics, and Damon called it a choreographed dance, and I'm gonna call Bob ballerina from now on. But it really is a monumental effort, they do a phenomenal job, and that's when everything's going well, and then things break inevitably, and that's when you really see the crew, the dedication and the skill level that we have in the field show up. It's pretty remarkable.
Good job.
Thank you, Darren.
Okay, a quick update on just the status of the district's COVID response. We hasn't changed in quite some time because the county's hasn't changed. So we're still technically closed to the public, but we're accommodating any requests we have for appointments, and that's working well. And obviously, public meetings, we have masks on. The staff's been great about complying with the mask requirement in the office with very few complaints. And it's, hopefully we're getting near the end of this thing.
I do want to say, sitting here, I saw probably 3 people come to the
Right.
door, and I don't know if they accomplished what they wanted to do or not.
I
but-
think most of
No,
them
they
are just
turned away.
dropping off stuff in the Dropbox, but they may have, and so I saw.
They all reach for the door handle, every one of them.
So we need to disinfect that damn door handle.
You know, Michael, with having the glass separating everybody, I don't know why they couldn't come into the lobby only, but
Part of it,
require somebody cleaning it afterwards, I suppose.
So part of the issue, what we recognized is when we opened it up to the public, we would have the public would come in, and the first thing that they would do is go use the public restrooms,
Oh.
and then they would go and drink out of the water fountain. It was like never failed. And then they would come out, and then they literally would just slide their check across the counter and walk out. So we kind of had to look at the fact that, and then we would have staff that would then come out and use the public restrooms. So, and use the water fountain. So part of it was, we just don't have the staff to be able to come out when a public member leaves or another employee leaves to go and disinfect everything. We've actually found it very helpful for people who need to come in, because if you're just dropping off a payment, you can go to the Dropbox and drop your payment off. For people that need to come in, it's been helpful, the appointments, because we can literally say, here is everything that you need to come to your appointment. So when they come one time, they've got everything gets processed while they're here, they walk out with their receipt or what they need in order to go back to the building department or whatever it is. Instead of, I think what we were finding is there was a lot of back and forth, so people would just show up at the, at the office, and then we would give them, here's the list of all the things you need, then they would have to leave, then they would come back a few days later. So this gives us that preemptive conversation that we can have with them, so that they're organized. We also have identified a lot of the things that people were coming to the office for, we can actually handle through DocuSign. And so we just get their email and we're like, we can handle all that paperwork and everything that you need all through DocuSign. And we can take your payment over the phone. So it's made it a lot more efficient.
So on our website, though, it makes it clear that we're closed and that they need to make an appointment, or they can still drop off.
Yes.
right.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm envisioning people coming here wanting to do something, and then reading the sign on the door, and then having to go back home and call, and then your process kicks in. But I just
No,
want
it's
to be clear
still
that
a
we're,
pop-up on the website, and we have sent out multiple notices on it. We remind the collaborating agencies on it almost every week. Yeah, it's something we continually try to
And
review.
the website is pretty current, or is, because I go to it occasionally just to look and what have you, and yes, you've taken off the things that, have aged out, and you're putting current information on it, so I appreciate that, thank you. Yeah, it's just kind of hard for us to be sitting up here watching those people come up to the door. It just kind of pains us.
And honestly, many times it is, they just want to drop the payment off. And they, we've got multiple signs on the front, all in red. And it says, no payments taken across the counter. You can put it in the Dropbox. You can call this number, and we have had where someone shows up and they do need to just pay their, capacity fee or whatever it is, and we'll have them call that number, they can stand up there and call, and if we have someone available that they can meet with, then, and they got everything that they need, then we'll go ahead and let them in.
Are we answering the phone now, or is it still rolling to a box and returning calls?
No, the phones are all being answered.
Okay, so the one other note I'll make about COVID, on this morning's call with Cal OES, they mentioned where Calaveras County is on the monitored list for the state still. And the issue, the way for us to get off of that list and allow the county to open up more than it currently is for the rate of positive test results has to go up. And the problem they're having now is not enough people are getting tested. And so, for example, today they said for the free testing site at the fairgrounds, there's 154 available appointment slots per day, and today there's 10 that are taken.
Oh, my.
And the problem is not that we have, some outbreak or some astronomical number of positive cases. The problem is we don't have enough negative test results to make the ratio reflect what's actually happening up here. So
Michael?
more healthy people need to go get tested so that we can
Well,
get more
are they-
negative test results and get us back open
Are
up
they
here.
just testing to see if you have an active case of it, or are they testing for those antibodies?
No, they're not. It's not an antibody test. It's just a COVID test, but you can make an appointment online very easily. I've done it a few times now. It's free. The results, there was a while when there was a surge, it was taking a week to get an appointment and another week to get your results. But now you can get an appointment for this afternoon or tomorrow morning,
Is it still
and you
the
have the
same?
results back in 2 or 3 days.
Test with the swab that everybody says is
What's the
awesome.
Yes.
number?
Can you go every 2 or 3 days?
You can go every day if you want, yeah. So they're really encouraging people to go get tested so that we can increase that ratio of negative test results and get us off the state watch list. There was, I think they said there were 15 new cases reported yesterday, but of those, only 2 were actually community spread. All of the rest came from the Avalon Healthcare Center,
Oh,
which is
yeah, that's
tragic in and of itself. But the fact that there's only 2 that were community spread is actually a very positive sign for the community as a whole. We just need more of those negative tests to get off the naughty list. So just wanted to spread that word. So it doesn't hurt. It's uncomfortable for a few minutes and it's free. So if everybody goes get tested, maybe the county can
I
start
don't care
opening up
if
again.
it costs $100. If it's uncomfortable, I'm not sick, I think it happen.
It's a little uncomfortable. It's not too bad.
They could pay me $100.
Well, yeah.
So a few more updates here. We submitted, with a lot of help from Mia, who just continues to be fantastic, our request for the increase in our authorization under the Section 219 WRDA funding. The request is to increase the authorization from $3 million to $13.2 million. The formal application was submitted 2 weeks ago, and one of the things I want to emphasize in this report is not only that we got the application in and we expect the authorization to be increased, but one of the things we did as a part of that application was reach out for letters of support and got a very, very positive response. We got letters of support from CV developers, from Supervisor Mills, from Al Alt, the CAO, from Habitat for Humanity, from Calaveras Council of Governments, from Calaveras Chamber of Commerce, Amanda Follendorf, who's the supervisor-elect for that district, Pete Campa at Copper Valley CSD. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. But it was just it was really heartening to see just the overwhelming support that we have for the project, which is going to be good for the whole community. So we are going to make sure we get thank you letters out to each of those organizations, and I think it also will, just raises awareness of that effort, of our effort on that part, and gets all of them kind of involved and up to speed on what we're trying to do down there. And I think the more support we have, the better. So we will hopefully have more positive news on that front.
And we have McClintock support, right?
We do. Yeah, well, and it's Yes, we currently have his support on that. We didn't earlier in the year for that specific request, but we didn't need it, or we don't need it. But we have his support on that effort right now, and we're working closely with his office to make sure that he will be a proactive supporter of our effort, not just to increase the authorization, but to bring those funds into the Army Corps 2021 work plan and actually appropriate those funds for implementation. So we can't, that part of it we can't do without his active support, and Director Ratterman's been involved in that effort to make sure we're working very closely with his staff to make sure he understands the importance of the project for the community. So yes, we expect his support on that.
Have we worked at all on having him come down to the district?
Yeah, so there was an effort a few weeks ago because he was here for a different reason. It didn't work out during that time period, but we've had conversations with his staff since then on when we can get him down here, meet with us and meet with the developers and hear directly from the community as to how important that project is and how much we need his support for it. So we expect his support on this effort.
Good.
Because I would like to see us, have him come here and maybe have a little coffee or something, because
I
he
think
would
that's a
be
great
all
idea.
in for that, right?
Yeah, yep. So we tried during this last visit, but he already had a very tight schedule. But they got the message loud and clear that we really want to make that meeting happen as soon as possible, and especially before we need him to actively advocate for us going into the next Army Corps work plan cycle. So we're gonna try to make that happen before the end of this year. I think we mostly got updates on the construction projects. Reach 1 is entering into a really critical stage. We had a public outreach meeting scheduled for yesterday. There's a WebEx-based meeting, which obviously was not going to be very effective during a PSPS event, so we canceled it. We already had another one scheduled for next Tuesday, so we're going to stick with that one, and we'll have more as needed. The contractor's in the process of testing, the pipeline is in the process of testing the main and adding the appurtenances that we need before they can start making the cutovers. And they're gonna give us a detailed schedule of who's gonna be shut off when, and we'll be doing a lot of outreach to the customers to make sure they're aware of that in advance. And hopefully still be on track for an October completion of the whole thing. So it's hopefully the end is near, but it is a very critical time of the project between now and the end of October. Tech Guide, as Damon already mentioned, moving along, and I think it was just the fact that we had a break, just a reminder as to why we really needed this project. Hopefully we don't have any more of those reminders. We don't need any more. We're well aware of it. We are planning on, Damon mentioned the fuel thinning project that is near completion near our Arnold wastewater plant. And at the suggestion of Director Thomas and President Underhill, staff's working on a special board meeting that would be hosted in Arnold that would focus on not only highlighting the project that has just been completed and the partnership that we had with CHIPS on that project specifically, but some other forest management related initiatives that we're working on. And I think it would just be a great idea if the board was willing to meet up there and raise the profile of that project, but also of that issue, and the fact that CCWD is proactively working with local partners to try to address that issue and protect our communities. And the fires that are happening right now are just a reminder of how important that work is. So we'll be in touch to make sure we get that scheduled and get all the right people there. And I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's an important issue we need to focus on. Along those lines, the Aqua Region 3 board has selected that issue to focus on in our presentation this year. So I think the meeting is right now, actually, but I think we had tentatively scheduled it for October 10th, but I'll make sure to give you all the updated information. And it will be a panel on the importance of forest management, but also similar to, I think, Director Cicada and President Underhill, and we're at the meeting with Steve Walensky a few months ago, the Highway 4 Coordination Committee meeting, where we discussed not just the importance of forest management and fuel thinning projects, but the importance of developing economic activity in those communities that can sustain those activities. So doesn't have to be just chasing grant funds to implement those projects. We can promote industries that will rely on the fuels from the forest to sustain themselves. And so that's really the focus of that program. I think, again, it can't come at a better time, and I think it's just a critical issue. So I'll make sure you all have that information.
October 10th?
Sorry, what's that?
October 10th?
I think it's October 10th, but I'll make sure to confirm that.
That's a Saturday.
And it's probably not. I
There's a
will
golf
make sure to
tournament that
confirm the date. I'll get all the information out to you well in advance. So those two events, I hope, will dovetail nicely and really highlight the importance of that issue. You guys have all, I think, probably already heard at this point, but Amador Water Agency hired a new general manager. Larry McKinney has just a really interesting, diverse background. I was on the interview panel, was really impressed with him, and have talked to him a few times already since he started over at Amador. I expect him to be just a really great addition to our region and a good partner for us. I'm optimistic about what he brings.
And he comes from?
He was on the
Southern
board of some
California,
small
right?
agency down there, Metropolitan Water District.
Small.
So he was on.
Yeah, I mean, he's not with the Met. Was he on their was he a representative on their board?
Well, he was the Orange County Water District's representative on the Met.
Okay, but what water district did he work
He
at?
originally, he was elected as a director for Moulton Niguel, where
Okay, right.
June Lopez is the
Yeah.
GM.
He recruited her away from here, and she left.
So hopefully
He
nobody
did.
holds that against him.
He was good friends with you.
But I think he's going to be great. So I'm really optimistic to hopefully meet him in person before long and get to work with him. I think he's going to be a really good partner. And he really appreciated President Underhill, you reaching out to him and welcoming him to the area. We also had, since the last board meeting, another meeting of the East Side Groundwater Sustainability Agency. We circulated a draft joint powers agreement a week or so in advance of that meeting. It's a unfortunately complicated document, as these things tend to be, but creating a new public agency is complicated. So it needs to cover all those bases. We're still waiting on, I think we had a very productive meeting, a very good discussion. Brad prepared a great presentation, walked the members of the GSA through the key components of the agreement. We're still waiting for written feedback from the legal counsel from each of the members, and then we'll incorporate all of those comments and work through that at the next East Side Groundwater Sustainability Agency meeting. But I just want to make sure the full board is aware that those discussions, that we have a fixed meeting time every month now, and those discussions are gonna continue until we have a new entity for you to consider. Let's see. We're kicking off the strategic planning process that we've discussed for several months. We're finalizing the contract with GEI, the consultant that was chosen to take us through that process. We hope to have a staff level kickoff meeting with them later this month, and then we'll be in touch with the board for and board involvement in that process. I think, I just think it's perfect timing, considering all that we have going on with implementing new technology, new software, new business practices, the number of new faces that we have, especially on the management team, the amount of turnover that we've had. This board, while you all have been together for quite some time now, which is great to have that stability, has not been through a strategic planning process together. So I just think this is really a perfect time to work through that process and really coalesce all of the efforts that we're currently undertaking and make sure that we have a guiding document so that as we implement these things, we're in lockstep with the direction from the board. I'm really looking forward to it. And it coincides.
Early October would be a good time.
Sorry, what's that?
Early October would be a good time.
We're trying to schedule the first meeting before deer season and the second meeting right afterwards. And there's other, we're working on some other pretty significant initiatives. Whether we go with a financial management consultant, how we update our reserve policy, how, a lot of water resources initiatives, changing how we do our capital improvement planning. I mean, these are huge initiatives for the district. And so for that to coincide with a strategic planning process, I think it's just going to be a really exciting time. So I'm very much looking forward to it. Lastly, I will be making my first appearance on Calaveras Public Television this week. So
What are you doing?
keep an eye out for that.
Congratulations.
What's that?
Who's interviewing you?
I think they're bringing in Sean Hannity, or was it Anderson Cooper? I can't remember. I think it'll be Corey
Probably
Burnett.
Barbara Walters, probably.
Walter Cronkite. No. I think it'll be Corey Burnett. I'm really looking forward to it. We have so much going on and we've had, I think, we try to do the best we can during COVID to push press releases out and maintain communication with the public, but it's definitely, it feels to me like we're just a little bit, there's a little bit of distance there more than we're accustomed to and more than we would like.
Well, under the circumstances,
Yeah, and like I say, we try to do the best we can under the circumstances, but we also want to just make sure we're doing everything we can to stay in as close contact with our customers as we can. So I think after we get through the Reach One project update, the public outreach meetings, we're going to hopefully learn from that experience. And then be in touch with board members as to whether or not we want to try to schedule some virtual town hall meetings in other parts of the district, or wait until we are able to do that in person.
So the one you're talking about in Arnold isn't virtual, right? You're talking about a special
It is.
meeting?
Yeah, no, we are
Oh,
not
it is?
allowed to do public gatherings right now.
Well, the special meeting would be a virtual?
Oh, sorry, the special meeting. I thought you were talking about the Reach One. The Reach One project would be a virtual meeting. The special meeting, no, we're planning on it being.
Would that be this year?
Outdoors and socially distanced, but in person.
This year?
Yes,
Yeah.
next month.
Okay.
We're shooting for early October is what we're hoping
Okay.
for. So we'll be in touch with the board members on
October 14th then?
coordinating the date.
and we'll
Oh, no,
have.
no, that'd be a regular
We'll
one.
have blue skies for you up the hill.
Okay.
I can't believe this.
No smoke?
I cannot
No smoke?
believe.
Okay.
I don't think there's that.
Promise? October?
Brad and I were on a call with somebody from East Bay Mud earlier today who said it was much worse down there. She said you needed a flashlight to walk around outside.
Yeah, my wife's down in Oakland today, and she said it looks like something out of an apocalyptic movie down there, just the orange.
Good time to wear masks outside.
This one is particularly hard for me to watch. This is my hometown. The mountains I grew up in are burning right now. So
Where's
it's
that?
Right outside of Bass Lake, Mammoth Pool.
Oh, yeah.
Camped there my whole life. So it's always sad to see fires on this scale, this magnitude. but it hits close to home.
You know, it's funny because all the fires have, and, you know, it was just a few years ago where the Butte Fire was one of the top fires in the state, one of the top 10 or whatever. And I think it's been surpassed by every fire that's out there today.
No, it was top 5.
And by
Butte Fire
10
was
times,
top
I mean.
5 in California history.
In just the last short period of time. I mean, it's just astounding.
Yeah.
The 3 burning today are now the largest in California history.
Yeah, well, we were right across from that one in Patterson. It was terrible down there. I mean, that's where we've been working. It's just like working in the fog all day long, you know?
And we're just coming into peak fire season,
Yeah.
and we're already over 2 million acres in California this year.
Crazy.
On that happy note, I think that's all I
Okay, now-
have.
Very good. Ta-da! Oh, really nothing to report. We have IRWM next week, and that's it.
I will make some comments on my report, but I want to ask Michael first before he gets off scot-free here.
Sure.
Did I overlook a mention of our, like the manager of external affairs? How's that recruiting going on?
We actually recirculated the job posting for that. We're looking at those applications as they come in currently. So we don't
Okay.
have any interviews scheduled at this point, but
What is the date of closing on that circulation?
I think we, Stacy's not here, but I think we made it a rolling, open until filled. But we'll review those as they come in, and as soon as we have a few candidates we want to talk to, we'll set those up. We want to fill that as soon as possible.
Okay, you should learn to do a not so good job on the press releases that you've been putting out, so it may be a while before we fill that position. We might not even need to, so. Anyway.
No, we need to.
It's been a team effort to pull all those together. So everybody's had to, and this is, it's been the status of the management team since Jeff Meyer left. We've been down a person, and everybody else has to pick up that slack. And it's just been a really phenomenal team effort.
You mentioned that Mammoth fire down there. There was a very lengthy article in the Sacramento Bee this morning about that, and talked in detail about the consequences of all the dead trees.
Yeah.
And how the trees on the ground and the trees standing. It just has created a situation that has not been observed before. That talked about how a typical scenario would be the fire would be hottest at the leading edge. Not so when it's burning through those dead forests, that it's just so much heat behind the leading edge of the fire that it has thousands of feet of updraft. And I never thought about this before, but when you have an updraft, you have a corresponding downdraft, and the downdrafts are coming back and just kind of rekindling the thing. It's just like a forge in a blacksmith shop. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, some of the worst images from the tree mortality situation a couple of years ago were from that area. Whole mountainsides, just brown pine trees. That some have fallen since then, but a lot of them, even if they've fallen, it's just a tinderbox. Even if they've fallen, there's still fuel for the fire. So it's a kind of a perfect storm.
Steve Walensky was mentioned prominently in that article, and so that started me thinking about when we are scheduling this early meeting in October. He will be a person that we'll invite.
He's high on the list, as well as Jan and Pat McGreevy. And Steve hasn't heard this yet, but he is also going to be subject to my recruiting efforts to participate in the Aqua Region 3 panel.
Oh, good.
He is such a phenomenal proponent for this issue that I think we should try to get him out in front of it every time we can.
It listed his profession as farmer. Who also has this CHIPS program. Anyway, what I want to report is that if anybody who's interested, there's a Planning Commission meeting tomorrow. That will be a virtual meeting that, where the Copper Valley Partners are their proposal to upgrade and redo the approvals for the Saddle Creek subdivision area. They are actually reducing the request for lots in that area, reducing it by about 349 lots. But even though it's a significant reduction, even though there's maybe as many as 4,000 units that have gone off the table since Saddle Creek was approved years ago in 1995, there still will be CSERC and MyValleySprings.com and people there talking about what a terrible thing is to approve this application. But anyway, you can call in and make comments on it if you'd like. But so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I have very little to report. Just been out there shaking babies and kissing hands. I think I get that wrong.
I think you're right.
And working on your folder or your binder.
Yeah, I'm working on my binder, yeah.
And you got some signs up?
I do have a few signs up, yeah. I'm taking it all very serious. That's all I have to report.
I have none.
Oh, you have nothing? I really don't have anything. Well, as you know, we have no power. I don't even know. I haven't even called up the hill to see how we are. How are we?
We should be coming into power here shortly.
Oh, okay. By the time I get home? Yeah.
I would think so.
Okay, I did stop at the PG&E thing, and here's some of, the little handouts, nice little charger, a solar charger, so that's good, because I really need it.
A solar charger for your phone or what?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I have up the hill.
Start your car with it.
Food generator.
I did forget one person that submitted a letter of support for us, and I want to make sure I got everybody. The new GM at Utica Water and Power. And I mentioned Jeff Meyer, so I also have to mention today, he sent me a picture of him holding his first grandchild.
Oh. And we're also gonna have another baby. I'm just so thrilled.
All right, we have
Okay,
work to do here.
I'm talking about babies.
You brought up babies, Jeff.
Oh, that's right, it was your fault.
Yeah, you have to pay attention to that. Okay, well, if nothing else, meeting's adjourned.
We have closed session.
Adjourned to closed session.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
What was that?
And you gotta read.
Okay.
We're doing a closed
Okay.
session.
That's okay, you just have to add adjourn to closed session.
Adjourn to closed session. I love you
And our-
guys.
and our
What would I do with
We
that?
should have taken public comment on closed session.
Okay.
Public comment.
Public comment on closed session, conference with legal counsel,
Yes.
potential litigation, government code.
Oh, we just stay in here
542 cases.
for closed
Might as well
session?
stay in here.
When's our
yeah.
next board meeting?
Our next board meeting is Wednesday, September 23rd. Oh, and then we didn't talk about the other one.
It's okay, we can make those announcements when we reconvene.
Oh, okay, all right.
October, new time.
Do we have Cameron on the phone?
Is it daylight savings time already?